Recording in progress.
Jayamavate Malvasamin Helena Sevanelamin Niraturuarang Hindina Bejaya ape patumai Labandi Javin Sahaya Sadhana.
Welcoming all of you with warmth and care. Commercial Bank. Our interest is in you.
In the ever-evolving world of business, MAG Holdings Private Limited has demonstrated its ability to adapt to changing customer needs by providing innovative and customized solutions. Today, we are one of Sri Lanka's most respected, diversified conglomerates with a presence in shipping, strategic investments, aviation, hospitality and leisure, renewable energy, freight and logistics, fisheries and aquaculture, and more. We have been able to expand our presence in the region, providing unmatched expertise, the highest quality, and an excellent service. Our remarkable growth is driven by our innate ability to reinvent ourselves. MAC Holdings, we cannot spell success without you.
Jayamavate Malvasamin Helena Sevanelamin Bejaya ape patumai Labandi Javin Sahaya Sadhana.
Welcoming all of you with warmth and care. Commercial Bank. Our interest is in you.
In the ever-evolving world of business, MAG Holdings Private Limited has demonstrated its ability to adapt to changing customer needs by providing innovative and customized solutions. Today, we are one of Sri Lanka's most respected, diversified conglomerates with a presence in shipping, strategic investments, aviation, hospitality and leisure, renewable energy, freight and logistics, fisheries and aquaculture, and more. We have been able to expand our presence in the region, providing unmatched expertise, the highest quality, and an excellent service. Our remarkable growth is driven by our innate ability to reinvent ourselves. MAC Holdings, we cannot spell success without you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on food crisis, under the title, Are We Facing Food Crisis? Conducted by the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce in collaboration with National Science Foundation. Without further ado, I would inform everyone of the house rules. Kindly switch off your cameras and mute your microphones. Only the speakers will use their cameras and microphones for the presentation and the dialogue. Questions from the participants will only be taken through the chat box. A recording of the session will be shared on the conclusion of the session. With that, I now welcome Mr. Manjula De Silva, CEO and the Secretary General of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, to do the opening remarks and the welcome. Sir, over to you.
Thanks, Shihara, and good afternoon, everybody. And warm welcome to this webinar, which is titled "Are We Facing a Food Crisis?" Which will be a discussion on food security challenges faced by the country and how to address them, which has been organized by the Agriculture Sector Committee of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, along with the Chamber Academy, and in association with the National Science Foundation. Let me also acknowledge our corporate sponsors, Commercial Bank and Mac Holdings Limited. So I believe this is a very timely webinar since there is a lot of interest currently on this subject. So if I may explain from a layman's perspective, this is happening at a time when we are somewhat concerned about the agricultural output of the country because there is a fear that it will be less than what is normally expected. And as we know, there are a number of reasons that are contributing to this situation. As most of you know, the non-availability of fertilizer is one of the primary causes for this. First, we had a ban on chemical fertilizer and other chemical inputs. Now the ban is lifted, but there is a problem with availability due to the shortage of dollars, as well as the depreciation of the currency. Plus, on top of that, fertilizer prices also rising significantly in the world market. So all these things have made fertilizer somewhat unaffordable and inaccessible to the farming community. Then on top of that, we are also facing an inadequate supply of wool for agricultural purposes, for agricultural machinery, transportation, then also fishing vessels. That has caused the prices of fish to go up significantly. And also we hear of a shortage of seeds with regard to certain varieties. So there is a issue there on the replanting, on the planting side. So in addition, also from the livestock industry, we are hearing that there is an inadequate availability of animal feed. So there are many factors contributing to this situation. And also, like, aggravating the position further is that normally when there's a shortfall, what we do is we import from other countries to manage that gap. But right now, due to the shortage of dollars, we have also concerns about how much of the limited dollar supply can be allocated for this purpose. So I'm sure the experts will provide many more insights during the course of this event. But I would like to make one request that we focus more on not so much analyzing the causes, but really putting all our minds together to see how we can really come out of this situation, how can we increase the agricultural output in the short term so that we can manage this situation to the best of our ability, because I feel if we do the right things, we can still mitigate the impact to a great extent. On the part of the Ceylon Chamber, we have also started engaging with government authorities on this matter. And I'm happy to say a couple of days ago, I had a very constructive discussion with the secretaries to the Ministry of Public Services, which is the former Public Administration Ministry, under which all the district and divisional secretariats operate, and also the Ministry of Agriculture. So both secretaries were there, and they are also like taking certain initiatives, and they briefed us about a new program, what is called the Kapakaru Govibim program. I'm awaiting more details, which I will share once we receive that with all of you. But to very briefly explain what they are trying to do is to identify blocks of land which can be used for cultivation, which is currently not being made use of, and also groups of people who are willing to cultivate that land. So they are trying to create a database of land and available manpower. And what they want the private sector to do is to basically support this initiative by providing them the necessary funding, and then also the inputs like fertilizer, seeds, etc. And also, if where possible, to come up with a buyback arrangement. I mean, basically something like an outgrower type of model, which I thought is a great idea. And we'll share the details as soon as we receive more from them. So I don't want to take up more time because there are lots of experts we are waiting to listen to, and hope that today's discussion will throw out some great ideas on how we can overcome the challenges that we are faced with on the food situation. So on that note, thank you very much, and I'll hand you back to Shihara.
Thank you, Manjula. On the agenda, following the agenda, now may I call upon Professor Ranjit Senaratne, Chairman of the National Science Foundation, to deliver a small speech on behalf of the NSF. Professor Ranjit Senaratne. I think we have a small issue with connecting to Professor Ranjit Senaratne. With that, we'll be connecting with him shortly. But I will go to the next item of the agenda. Presentation from the Director General of Department of Agriculture, Dr. Ajantha De Silva. Unfortunately, he will not be joining with us for this forum today, but we received a video recording of his presentation. So we'll be playing the video on behalf of Dr. Ajantha De Silva.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if you take the for any country, the national food security is the number one for when we are thinking about the country's social status and the well-being of the people, and you know, the one way it is a national security as well. So therefore, the thinking of food security, the Department of Agriculture and especially the agriculture sector plays an important role in achieving the food security. So in that sense, so mainly the rice, other feed crops and the vegetables are most important the items that we as citizens should get the right amounts and the right quantities also in an affordable price. So that is what really people expect from the nation. So in that sense, if we take especially the paddy, so we were self-sufficient in during the last few years. So if I want to get the normal requirements, it's about 200,000 tons per month we need as rice, and so the total year requirement is about 2.4 million tons of rice. And so to achieve that plan, so we are doing rice cultivation in Maha and Yala season, and usually it is about Maha about 800,000 hectares, and in the Yala it is about 500,000 hectares. So with that, the extent, so with the average yield of 4.5 tons, with giving all the required the inputs and keeping the crop healthy. So we usually get about nearly 3.2 to 3.4 metric tons of rice sale, which really serves to complete the rice requirement of Sri Lanka, and even with a little buffer. So that was a condition what we were keeping throughout. And if you take the maize, since the poultry industry has gone, developed very well. So therefore, with that poultry industry and for other necessities, so we have to cultivate and produce about 600,000 maize, but usually with the Department of Agriculture's initiatives and with the new hybrids coming from the outside, also from one of our hybrid, so we have been able to come up to a level of 360,000 tons annually, and the rest was imported. And if you take the vegetable cultivations, so we have been able to during the, if you take the extents and the production of the low country vegetable, it was in 2019 Yala, it was about 17,747 hectares, and we got about 225,415 tons. And up country it is about 13,505, and the extent and the production was about 220,000. So like that, if you take previous years, we have all these have been achieved, and so it was really distributed among the farmers with affordable prices. And so yeah, taking the extents of other fields also, we were quite okay, as I mentioned, because especially in onion, potato, maize, so we have some shortages, especially maize. As I mentioned, it was about 360,000 we were producing, but the net requirement was about 600,000. And then if you take the green chili, of course, we were really self-sufficient, but the red chili, so we were mostly importing from neighboring countries. And if you take the other mung bean, cowpeas, groundnuts, and all that, so we have been able to, with the new technology and the management, so we have been able to reach the required targets. So like that, we were doing, we have been able to supply the required quantities. Only thing is now, when with the policy change with the organic agriculture, so what we were expecting is, as the Department of Agriculture also, we have informed that we should be maintaining the required nutrient levels for the crops to grow. Even we are going for organic agriculture, or the using organic inputs. The problem we have seen was, even we have we tried to support the nutrient requirement for all these crops. So the required nutrients have not been supplied to the farmers at correct time and of course in correct quantities. Therefore, finally, even there was a big resistance from the farmers themselves for this change. So therefore, we finally in 2021-22 Yala, most of the crops that we have grown have come up with lowering in yield. If you take the rice yield, so we have about drop of around 40%. And if you take vegetables and the fruits, not the fruits, vegetables and the other grain crops, also we have come up with some low productivity in all these fields where they have adapted. That is because what I feel is one thing, the fertilizer, the support which was not given at proper time, and the distribution was really I should say not given at proper time, and of course the quality of the organic fertilizer which was provided was not even the standards were given, but when it was supplied, there were some problems in those supplies. So those are the main issues that really finally for the lowering of yield at different levels. To overcome this situation, I think the Department of Agriculture with the Ministry of Agriculture, now we are moving with integrated plant nutrient systems, and of course the IPM, that is integrated plant management, pest management, as a tool which we have already tested and proved as the Department of Agriculture, as the policy in cultivating forward in to achieve the food security in this country. And we have short-term, medium-term, and long-term the activities lined up by the ministry with all the stakeholders in achieving the food security in short run as well as to achieve in long run to keep the country move forward in agriculture in all aspects. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll be inviting our next presenter, Mr. Mario D. Alves, until we get connected with the Professor Sandaratna. Mr. Mario D. Alves, the forum is over to you.
Good afternoon. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you. So my theme is produce, process, store, or perish. And the reason is that we need to secure Sri Lanka's food chain, value chain, to beat the looming food shortage. So let's look at the current scenario, how we got to where we are. The pandemic, which was followed by fighting or war in Europe, between two of the world's most prolific food and energy suppliers, and climate change, which has been going on for a while, has taken us towards the biggest global food crisis we have seen in our lifetime, and maybe a few generations before. Currently, 40 of the leading global economies are stockpiling food and agri-inputs on behalf of their own citizens. This environment, coupled with unethical and biased use of public wealth in Sri Lanka, has created the perfect storm for the island nation to face probably its very first real famine. I call this man-made because though we have a habit of blaming our leaders could have never brought us to this situation without the help of all of us. So we all have to be blamed, and we all need to sit down now and start looking for solutions. In 2019, this country was actually overproducing rice. We have produced more than we consume. But today, as the presenter, the director of agriculture says, he says there is a drop of 40%, but the private sector thinks this will be around 50% actually. But we also feel there is a slim window of hope. And this is the only chance for this country. And it's a time for a reset and prudent resource allocation. You know, it's very sad that we have come to this situation in the modern world where we have experts in the IT industry, and there's so much of data that can be collected so easily. But we continue to just, look at the things in the dark and try to firefight our way through all our crises. I mean, I don't know, maybe I don't know something, but look at the long lines of vehicles at the petrol sheds. Each of those vehicles have a number plate and it has been registered with the Register of Motor Traffic. Surely somebody can collect this data and allocate with a simple text message to say, go and collect your 10 liters or whatever it is. They can find out what these people are doing, rather than look at the energy and the productivity of the country that is wasted in front here. Similarly, it is with the agriculture and food processing sector as well. So if you have proper evidence, I think it is still not late. We should, spend our time. I know there is a big crisis, but at the same time, to start getting the proper data and building up the evidence that we need to divert all the resources we have, or the little resources we have, on a priority basis to certain areas, like food, fishing, processing and things like that. So what has happened without the foreign exchange? We are hampering the inputs, because all our inputs into agriculture are imported, from the fertilizer to the crop protection to actually the hybrid seed. There is a very small percentage that is created locally. I know there is a hype because I think we Sri Lankans as a nation, as a people, we are fairly well behaved towards crisis. You see, in this time of crisis, we have people protesting, we have our leaders not agreeing in parliament and things like that, but we come together. We try to solve some of the problems that we can solve. But I think I cannot forecast what will happen in the future. But I think this is not sufficient. Just growing and home gardens and, getting people all excited. It's a good thing because we are actually focusing people on the problem that we are heading in for. But at the same time, we need a more managed approach. And I think the private sector has a big role to play. You see, end of the day, it's the private sector, big, small, medium, and we employ around 7 million people. So it's high time the private sector takes up its responsibility, and I think we should stand up. We should first settle our problem among ourselves. We should not be all staring at Jayawardhanapura and waiting till they solve our problems. I am a firm believer that despite our government, we have the possibility of getting together and bringing solutions which are homegrown, because these problems are home created. You see, our donors did not come and create this problem. It's our people who handled our finances that created the problem, and we let them do that. So now it is high time that we say, no, it's enough. Now we need to take on behalf of the people we employ, on behalf of the people who consume from us, we need to see that somehow this is corrected even at this very late stage, and things are done in a better manner. So the SME sector is basically running out of capital. You see, our banking sector is quite old-fashioned, and they look for collateral, and they are quite risk-averse. There are no equity funds which will fund, and also the SME sector is to blame in so many ways. You see, there is still this habit of where we are trying to avoid taxes. Due to this, we do not have proper accounts which are credible. One of the things that can happen immediately is now they have a threshold for a thing like VAT. Now, if you don't have a threshold for VAT, and everybody who is doing business from the smallest to the largest has a VAT file, it is registered in there, and we have a simple online system where you upload all your transactions and everything. Investors can actually look at that as a credible situation for them to invest into the industry. And in the small food industry is very important. The SME food industry very important for food security of the country, because they are the people who will buy up the harvest and see that it gets stretched on till the next harvest. And if there is a shortfall or if there's a bumper crop, all those things are not put to waste. They are, the resources are put together. But if you don't have capital to buy when the crop is in, then you cannot process. You don't have energy. The small farmers who are mostly around 1 acre or so, they are also out of capital, including the people who are growing rice. You see, for instance, the small rice grower, it costs them in the today's price list, it would cost around 230,000 rupees to produce an acre of rice, which will ultimately give a yield of around 2,000 kilos of paddy. So even at a price of 140 rupees for the paddy, which may be the price, we are thinking that this would be the price, it can be more in the next season, they only get back a profit of 280,000 or a return of 280,000, which with a profit, very small profit of 50,000 for a 3 months of work, having taken into account a very small component of family labor. So the question is, why would they do that? You see, I think it is high time that these things are taken into account. If we are always complaining that our younger generation are either wanting to travel abroad or want to buy 3-wheelers and hang out in the junctions, but we are not solving the real problem. When they get back to the field, there isn't adequate money for them to live at least the minimum decency of which they would like to have. We have spent our good money in giving them education. We have spent the money on health. They are healthy people. And then we disrespect them by expecting them to produce our food with that level of profitability. So it's time that we start looking at it. Yes, our food will cost more. And then the state and the country have a responsibility to see that those people who can't afford, if we are supposed to be a market-driven country, then let us help the consumers who can't afford. But when we actually throw in all our money at the stage of production, and it is misused or not used, and everybody who can afford and who have means to afford much more benefit by that initiative, I think it's a waste of resources. So there again, I think it's very important that we somehow or another find a way of having all the data we need in the country. If we need to create food security, we need to have that. We need to know how many people are growing, where it is growing. I know the agriculture department has some statistics, but these need to be updated. And we have a fantastic outreach program. Unfortunately, due to the politics of which are happening in this country, that also we do not make the proper use of it. So homemade problems, I believe, need homegrown solutions. So we need to, rather than start talking about the reasons, and we are now getting very confused. We are actually, the messages we are sending out are not very encouraging. We are telling our government servants, oh, you can go abroad, you can find jobs, we don't have money to pay you. We are telling our youth, go abroad. I don't know how we can build back a country without our people. Yes, we may have an overpopulated government sector, and we may have youth who are not putting, but if we have a focused effort and we find ways and means of putting them back into productive jobs or productive self-employment, creating value for the country and for themselves, then we do not have to chase them off and hope that they will throw some dollars back at us. So in the food industry, there's plenty of scope. We have two large seasons, the Yala and the Maha. And in between, in certain areas, we have such good weather patterns that we can even cultivate a third round. So we have to be on the ball. We have to and proper advice has to be given to our leaders. We all know what happened in the recent past. And another, everybody is talking about the organic fertilizer, but also this turmeric effort. I know people said, okay, we can grow all the turmeric we want in the country. But did we realize that a crop of turmeric takes 10 months and another 2 months for harvesting and land preparation? So one whole year, you're writing off your land. And now it has totally collapsed. Because I think they just looked at, okay, we want self-sufficiency, we are not going to import. And we tried to solve an import problem by addressing an agriculture issue which has not taken into account all the factors. So please, it needs, even as chambers and people like that, it's time now we start talking up. We should not be afraid to tell people the truth. And, when people shout back at you, like it happened in the recent past, we should be able to stand up and say, no, we are right. Please listen to us, because if you don't, we have enough of past experience to tell you that it's not going to work for us. And another issue is that we are so divided. We are so divided in society. You look at the government institutions. You see, we need to come together. We need to galvanize the people to work together. Look at all the, government-owned institutions. If somebody wants to come up with solar power, the unions are protesting against it. You see, this is not a time we should do this. Everybody should get onto the same page and say, look, we have a power crisis. What is the way we do this, the fastest way to solve this, and then get down to it. Now, if we don't have power in the food industry, we are unable to transform our harvest into something that will wait till the next season. So within a very short time, you will run out of that harvest. And that is what is happening, because most of the SMEs, especially the SMEs, do not have the energy that is required for them to do their work. Even the larger companies are faced with problems because you don't have enough diesel to run your generators, or you don't have diesel to run your boilers. And we need to, and also we need to have everybody on the same page. So, for instance, look at the energy or the fuel we have. If you look at the vehicles on the roads in Colombo, somebody who doesn't live here may ask the question, how come you all have a crisis for fuel? We are running all those vehicles. But if the government can develop, have a quick fix of doing some work on the public transport, so that most of us can come to a situation. I know the Colombo people will start screaming their guts out, but we have to do this. If we do not share the burden and we expect just one portion of the society to share the burden rather than us, we are going to do. So if we can save that energy and give it to the tractors, if we can save that energy and give it to the fishing boats, if we can save that energy and give it to the boilers that will transform our crops, we will at least have our food. So it's high time that we all start realizing that we have a share in the burden as much as the share we have had of good life up to now. So I think as a chamber, or as the chambers at the private sector, we also need to talk to all our people. We need to talk to ourselves, and we should not be expecting our leaders to deliver, because they have shown that they are not going to deliver in a hurry. And that's the biggest problem. Then the other thing is consumption, food consumption. You announce the smallest of problems and the supermarket racks completely go empty. The people who can afford just hoard. Now, this is a big issue, because if you do that, there are certain a large portion of our country now who can't afford to store. They live by the day. And if they are unable to purchase their food, they are then going to start on a very destructive page, because hungry and angry people, both put together, without the resources that they need to live their day-to-day life, is going to be a problem. So this is very important. And the channels, you see, for instance, the food channel. If you look at the food chains in the old days, the CWE or cooperative society was created so that local produce can go into the market very quickly. It has been politicized over the years, and we see that it is not doing its job. It is importing and selling, and there is so much of corruption in it. Whereas, it should be the cooperative societies in countries like Japan and Switzerland are run by consumers. They actually sit there and say, okay, we want to buy local produce. What is the social impact in this food stuff that is created? Is it good for us? It is safe. And all those things put together, and then they tell their management, okay, you can list this product. Now, I am sure whoever started up this movement would have been expecting a similar thing from them. But sadly, today it's not doing anything more. And it is just trying to compete with the large private sector supermarket chains, whereas it should be looking at the social impact. Of course, profitable. We are not. As the private sector, we should never encourage loss making this thing and things. So ethically produced, ethically consumed should be our theme into the future. Because otherwise, if just one rung of society is consuming all the food that we have and storing it up, some of it getting spoiled, some of it getting outdated and things like that, whereas the other part of the society is not. And in this process also, the private sector food industries have some responsibility, because we have to bring in innovation. We don't have electricity. We don't have energy to move things from place to place. Many problems are facing us. Our people, you see, when our people come to work, even when our farmers go to the field, they are not going in the needed positive mindset. They have to face thousands of problems in their day-to-day life, and they come in. So somehow we need to now get together and say, okay, we are in a problem. First and foremost, we have to accept that we are in a problem. Sometimes you may see some people say, oh, where is the problem? You're exaggerating. Okay, then let's sit down and find out to what level this problem is. Because food crisis is unlike, you see, petrol for your car or gas or something like that. You can at least cook with firewood. But if you don't have the food to cook, what are you going to cook? So we need to actually sit down and talk about this. Every part of society has to cooperate together to actually do this. And there has to be adequate incentives for society to actually consume in an ethical manner. So in the food industry, we have to work out. We don't have transport issues. We have huge, we do have transport issues. I work out of Dambulla, and you look at half the trucks are in queues, and the farmers are bringing their produce with the greatest of effort. They bring their produce to the market and then can't move it out from there. In the evening, tons of produce. So this is a crime if we are producing food and we can't actually move it. So my suggestion is, we have the railway. We have the railway. We have the railway track. There are some extensions. We have, for years since the Dambulla market had started, we have been saying, you know, start coupling the railway from Habarna to Kakirawa through the H9 project, and run the railway, you containerize the vegetables and bring it direct down to Hunupitia. All the thousands of trucks that have to run, and all the destruction that takes place with our food crops on their way post hours can be reduced a lot. And we have to start retaining some of our technicians and our scientists and our specialists. You know, we can't have a country where our prime minister and everybody is saying, oh, go find some jobs somewhere else. We are a sinking ship. How are we going to do this? You see, we need to say, okay, we have made some mistakes. We are at a bad place, but let's get together. We are going to come out of this somehow, because there is no other way we can solve this. So the other issue is also to look at simple and innovative and sustainable interventions. You see, like alternate energy, we need the support. You see, if people are going to invest in especially in the food industry, we need electricity to a great way for our freezers and everything else. If people are going to invest, we need to have our things as soon as possible. And we need to get our connections. So if the transformers have to be upgraded and all those things. So I think we had at one time, I think during Mr. Atulat Mudali's time, and even after that several times, we had this East to Do business meetings where the departments and all of us got together. Similarly, for the food industry, I'm sure the chamber can facilitate. We don't have to wait for the government to do this. We don't have to wait for our ministers to do it. We are employing, bulk of the people in this country. We are creating the bulk of the wealth for this country. So we should be having our meetings and calling our ministers to come and attend. Because if we don't get to that, we are never going to take this country to where it really can be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mario D. Alvis, for sharing the great insights with us. Before I go to the next presenter, I would like to invite Professor Nimal Senaratne to share his ideas with regard to the food crisis that we are currently facing and this webinar. I may now call upon Professor Ranjit Senaratne, the Chairman of National Science Foundation, to take over the forum.
Okay, thank you.
And also, I kindly request all of the speakers and panelists again, please adhere to the time allocated, as we have a very limited time slot, and it's for this exciting discussion.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Manjula Silva, CEO of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, distinguished resource persons and dear participants. We are truly delighted to be a party to this very important, topical and timely event organized by Ceylon Chamber of Commerce jointly with National Science Foundation. On the National Science Foundation, Mr. Rishi Sahid, the chairman of the Steering Committee Agriculture, has been really working on this program, and jointly with the chambers have drawn up a program to address key issues and also identified a galaxy of high-profile, competent resource persons to do justice to the topic at issue, how we can mitigate the impact of economic crisis on food and nutritional security. Also, when we look at this program, we see it's a truly multidisciplinary. We see scientists in agriculture, fisheries, animal science, social science, also nutritionists, human nutritionists are working together to address this issue holistically, and we are very happy about this event. As a chairman of the National Science Foundation, I wish to share a few thoughts in the limited time assigned to me. As you all know, as mentioned by previous speakers, we are going through a very difficult time, going through a real crisis. So what we have been doing in the past, we cannot continue, or we cannot do business as usual. We know the critically important inputs for agriculture, fertilizer, pesticides, weedicides, and also to dry machinery fuel are extremely limited. We have about 40% of land under agriculture and 2 million farmers. The limited quantities of fertilizer or other agrochemicals or fuel we are getting as a loan has to be invested, used in a most effective and productive manner. So we have to really, there should be a systemic change. In this regard, it is crucially important to identify the most important crop species to address the food security issue, then identify the most promising areas climatically and edaphically to produce high yield. And then not only that, we have to also identify the best farmers available. We have 2 million farmers, but if we really distribute equally, like we did earlier through populist measures, all fertilizer chemicals equally to all farmers, I think we will never be able to overcome the crisis. It will add to the crisis. So we have to identify the most promising crops and identify most promising areas and do matchmaking so that they will produce optimum yield. And also do that, we have to identify the best farmers in each AGA division and get them to do cultivation, and others have to cooperate. Then only we could be able to get highest return on investment. If we start distributing fertilizer and other inputs and fuel equally or indiscriminately among farmers, we will be from bad to worse. That is the message we have to really, I have to transmit. To drive home this point, I wish to take a small example. For instance, we have nearly 800 hectares of paddy. And if you look at the yield, it will vary from about maybe 2.5 metric tons to 7 or 7.5 metric tons per hectare. So we have to identify farmers who are giving above 5, above the national average, 5 to 7. And we have to provide inputs to them. This is challenging, but we have to discuss with farm organizations and identify the best and get the best out of them. This is my message. And I think we have faculties of agriculture practically in every province. They have a lot of human resources, a lot of physical resources, land. If they have shortage of planting material, they would be able to do that. And NSF being a hub institution in the country and also with close contacts, close liaison with chambers and other institution agriculture would be able to work in concert and help the country overcome this crisis by mobilizing and channeling the right people for this task at this crucial hour. I wish this very important event great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Naratna, for your thoughts. And we moving on to the next item on the agenda to share the scientific community perspective of food security by Professor Buddhimarambe. Unfortunately, Professor Buddhimarambe has to attend for another conference in Germany on climate change. So on behalf of Professor Marambe, Mr. Rizvi Sahid, the chairman of National Chamber Agriculture Sector Committee, will be take us through the slides. May I call upon Mr. Sahid to take over the forum?
Thank you, Shiara. On behalf of Professor Buddhimarambe, who was called off to attend a global climate conference at very short notice, he requested me to present his slides. I'll try to do justice. Professor Marambe is an erudite scholar and has been continuously involved in the subject of agriculture and has given a lot of input into the current crisis as well. So together with Dr. Weerakun, former Director General of Agriculture, who is also joining the forum as a panelist, we will try to comment on some of the issues as well as the solutions proffered by Professor Buddhimarambe. Next slide, please. So these are some of the background statistics and information which I'm going to skip, which already has been discussed, the definition of food security in terms of availability, access, affordability, quality, nutrition, and safety. And I think this is something that is very key, already discussed in some outline form. So we'll move on. We all are aware of the crop production systems and the critical inputs required. From a technical point of view, there has to be the required amount of seeds, the right quality of seeds, the plant nutrients, with the current Director General of Agriculture also alluded to in terms of the hybrid varieties and the requirement of plant nutrition, the crop protection required for plants and how that's going to get affected, and recent tragedy of the banning of even agrochemicals, which has affected the outputs. the absence of the required machinery affected by problems of the foreign exchange shortage, and of course currently diesel and energy. And this is the last one is with regard to irrigation water. That also is an area for the scientific community to engage in, is to see whether we can cultivate our paddy with less water, which is currently a very important issue. So these are some of the critical issues with regard to crop production systems. Next slide, please. Now, this is Professor Marambe's contention. He has aggressively worked on this area and also tried to influence government policy, but to no avail. And that is that the policy directive that was made on the 27th of April 2021, ban on synthetic fertilizers, subsequently repealed, which Professor Marambe says which was too late on 30th of November 21, just caused a huge crisis in the agriculture sector. Next slide. So the impacts of this have already been discussed in detail. Professor Dr. Ajanta mentioned paddy is reduced by 40%. Mr. Maruyadi already said that we feel it is more. And Professor Marambe says reduction is 50, huge implications. We have to do a lot of catch up with regard to the maize yield, which is quite significant and impactful both for the feed and feed sector, also the animal feed sector, huge impact. And also from the consumer point of view, which Mario also alluded to, we look at food inflation at 57% in May, up from 45% in April, and is going to get higher in the month of June as well when the statistics are out. So a lot of impacts on the paddy, the maize, food sector. Also tea sector, we all know the impacts. We have looked at it. We look during the Q&A on some of the solutions that we can address from the viewpoints presented by the panelists. Next slide, please. So this is a very snapshot of the global food security index. You can see in 2012, Sri Lanka was higher than the rest of the South Asian countries. But in 2021, we have dropped to 3rd place. And it is likely that by 2022, we may very well go to the bottom in terms of food security index. Next slide. So these are the issues that currently have to be addressed, and the scientific response has to come from the scientific community, which is the monthly rice requirement of nearly 200,000 metric tons. Annual rice requirement for Sri Lanka is 2.4 million metric tons. By end of September, we see this huge shortfall. And of course, government has, from the government side, taking measures with regard to import of rice, 300,000 metric tons from Myanmar. And then China has been requested to provide 1 million metric tons of rice. Indian credit line to provide 40,000 metric tons. And also April, May, food aid from China, 5,000 metric tons of rice and 9,000 metric tons of rice from India. Now, all of this is still pledges, but still we are facing a fairly huge shortage, which is likely to impact us from the months of September onwards. And you can see rice imports already. Professor Marambe from his research shows that 300,000 metric tons until 15th of April have been imported. Next slide, please. Yes, we can move on. That's Professor Marambe's depiction, how destroyed in seconds. And revival of Sri Lankan agriculture is a huge task. A lot of planning, a lot of coordination, time consuming, and a massive cost to the economy needs quick interventions. Next slide. So regulatory interventions, there are some issues that have to be addressed, and that is that some of the gazettes relating to organic agriculture need to be withdrawn. And I think there is a strong lobby that's going on. I think the chamber also will lobby this. That is the withdrawal of gazette that gives public officers and other persons involved to follow the directive of the organic culture or the organic cultivation system. So that's something that has to be done immediately, because we can see that some of the government officers are still not aggressively trying to find ways in which to go back either to a balanced organic and non-organic response to agriculture. Next slide. So in terms of technology interventions, Professor Marambe's contention is that there is a special need from the part of the Department of Agriculture, the Mahaweli Authority, the private sector, universities and farmers to engage in the provision of seed paddy. And now this is going to be a huge task. It's something that can benefit from discussion as well during the Q&A session. How are we going to make available this 6.4 million bushels of seed paddy, or 130,000 metric tons of seed paddy that is required to meet the food needs of the country? This is something that we can discuss, and I'm sure Dr. Weerakoon is also in the panel today, will provide some answers. Let's move on. So technology interventions for hybrid seeds for maize also is an important area. Here again, action is required from support from the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank for hybrid seed supply, since Sri Lanka imports over 90% of its maize requirement from hybrid seeds, which is imported. There are some local varieties, but perhaps some work can be done with the local varieties in order to achieve the shortfall in maize seeds or maize seeds for planting. Next slide. So fertilizer, again, there is a separate session which is handled towards the end of the presentations today. And I'm sure during the session on the fertilizer, we can get some practical ideas on how the use of fertilizers, the balanced recommendations between organic fertilizers and inorganic fertilizers can help to resolve some of the nutrition requirements for Sri Lanka's agricultural crops. Yeah, next slide. Pesticides also, there is the strong requirement of making available the required pesticides. At the moment, there is also a high incidence of smuggled pesticides as a result of the ban. There's also talk that the weedicide glyphosate, the ban may be rescinded, and some action is required with that also, at least even for a specific period of time, so that the weed control, particularly amongst plantation crops and also paddy, can be resolved. Next slide. Hybrid seeds. This is again an issue that has because of the forex crisis. There was a large quantity of seeds that was awaiting LCs, and the absence of letters of credit did not make that come available. Dr. Ajanta De Silva spoke about the hybrid seed varieties and the production that is going on. Mr. Mario De Alvis also spoke about land availability, not only for cultivation. We need some amount of land for production of even the local varieties of seeds, and these all require urgent action, and a lot of people need to get involved, including in the private sector. Particularly those companies who are involved in seed production need to join hands more than ever before with the Department of Agriculture, with the Mahaweli Authority, in looking at the provision of seeds for planting in the upcoming Yala season. Next slide. So medium long-term solutions, Professor Marambe refers to making at a wide scale the Sri Lanka Good Agricultural Practice System, which already is getting enriched. It will help us to ensure continuous high quality provision of fruits and vegetables, and also for paddy. And this is something that needs to be actioned very fast. And I'm sure the Department of Agriculture will take steps to ensure that the SL GAP system is brought across the entire fabric of agriculture in Sri Lanka very speedily. Next slide. So research intervention is very clear, and I'm sure a lot of the NSF resource people who are involved here and outside from the department as well could look at how some of the critical research topics can be addressed, both as Professor Ranjit Senratne said, even in the short term and also the long term. I think Professor Senaratne offered the practice or suggestion that we map and zone the country into areas where we get the best crops, and that research has to be fast-tracked and very quickly practiced. And definitely there is a scope, as Mr. Mario De Alvis also said, to have outgrower programs where such practices of areas that yield highest yields can be made into a national program very speedily. We have to think outside the box. We have to look for innovative solutions. And this is what Professor Marambe is alluding to in terms of the public-private partnerships in the long run. Yes, next slide. Thanks, Shiara. Over to you. I know we have a long agenda, so I hope I've done justice to Professor Marambe's slides in his absence. And Dr. Veerakun, ex-Director General of Agriculture, who is now a consultant with FAO, can also offer some insights in Marambe's present. Unless you have some comments right now, Dr. Veerakun, or you want to take it under the Q&A?
No, I think as we explained, I will take it up at the Q&A. The special thing what I want to say is we have to make sure that the seed paddy should be available for the mass season, and some more of the what is available from the yali we can salvage and take something out of it.
Over to you, Shiara.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saeed, for the taking us through the presentation and the sharing the good insights with us on behalf of Professor Marambe. May I now call upon our next presentation to do the next presentation on agribusiness perspective of food security. Actually, we invited Mr. Rupshan Gunatilaka, Director of Agribusiness Development, Ceylon Biscuit Limited. Unfortunately, due to the personal emergency, he has to attend to another matter. On behalf of Mr. Rupshan Gunatilaka, Mr. Amal Gunaratna, Agriculture Development Manager of Ceylon Biscuit Limited, will be doing the presentation for us at the forum. Mr. Amal Gunaratna, I invited you to take over the session.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you share my presentation, please?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon. Today we were discussing about a very important topic, food crisis and the food security. Let me share some of the thoughts of how we see the food crisis and what we need to do to maintain the food security. Next slide, please. So yes, we have done the risk assessment on how food prices impact to the farming community and the urban community. So in the general information is in this slide. Farming communities consist of 30% of the Sri Lankan population. So our thinking is the farming community will have lesser impact from the food crisis compared with the urban community. So in the general sense, they have all grains with their home, especially paddy, vegetables, coconuts, even coconuts, and also their energy consumption is low, and they have simple and economical lifestyles, and also the farming incomes will lessen the impact of rising cost of living too. And also they have grains, so they have a high probability to exchange in commodities to fulfill their basic needs with the village traders or vendors. So dependencies from the farming community basically for the fuel and fertilizer and the inputs. So rural farming communities are less at risk in a food crisis. Next slide, please. On the other hand, in the urban communities has face high risk of food crisis because they have high demand for fuel and other utilities. They highly dependent on the food supply chain and highly resistant to change lifestyle, their lifestyle, and also highly impacted by the rising cost of living. And also they have limited food stocks in their homes because they at least they have just for 1 week food stock in their houses. And also they have dependent on all types of foods, utilities, and also income source. Next slide, please. Potential risks in urban communities. The hunger and malnutrition is obvious due to affordability issues and also social unrest, and poor health and well-being due to inadequate intake of calories. Early school dropouts due to income loss from the rural communities. Next slide, please. So let me discuss some of the potential solutions for the current food crisis. The first one is reform the agricultural policies. So which is obvious because we are facing this issue because of policy change. So we strongly believe that the agriculture policies should be reformed and decisions to be taken based on the facts and also research data based. Then this correct agricultural policy should be implemented to avoid the current food crisis. And also there are a lot of issues associated with the supply chain, especially nowadays fuel shortage and some of the technical issues are mainly involving for this supply chain issues. So we need to address this issue as well. And also inventory management interventions we need to implement because we all know we have limited stocks of rice for the nation. So we need to proper management systems to build up buffer and safety stocks in the national levels. And also we need to negotiate with the other countries to build up our buffer stocks. And also we have get their support to build up our buffer stocks as well. And also we need to plan cultivation and crop types. This is very important because we need to plan our crop calendar based on the demand, what type of crops we need to cultivate and when we cultivate, and all the things should be decided based on the demand. And also government large organization like forces, they have a lot of human power, equipments, even land. So we can divert those resources into crop production in short term to mitigate current food crisis. And also there are a lot of post-harvesting losses in our country. You all know that around 30% of the production is lost due to poor post-harvesting handling. So we need to implement good post-harvesting techniques to prevent that wastage. And also seeds is a very important part of the crop production. If we don't have quality seeds for the next few years, so we are going to trouble to continuing our crop production. So this is a very important area to build up and proper planning to produce enough seeds within the country. And also promote home gardening will be the short-term solution for the fulfill the household needs, because there are a lot of interventions from the Department of Agriculture. So they develop small home gardening concepts, even urban areas, so which we can promote to increase the food production. Not only that, we can educate the general public and create awareness for good food and waste practices, which means not even the raw material form. After cooked, we waste a lot of food. So we need to prevent or stop that wastage to manage this food crisis. Next slide, please. So let me talk about CBL's actions to mitigate food supply chain risk. So last year we knew that importation restrictions of agrochemicals and fertilizer will have a negative impact on our business. So we were planned in advance, and we are currently able to maintain a 1-year buffer, grain buffer stocks for our business. So that is why I'm earlier also discussed about the importance of the planning in crop production. And also we have introduced some technology for grain storage, especially silo storage for our grain storage, which we can minimize the post-harvesting losses. And also we equipped with our farmers, especially seeders and intercultivators, which was funded by the Small Agribusiness Partnership Project, SAP. And also we were able to introduce combined harvesters to reduce the dependency of the labor, and as well as improve the post-harvesting, minimize the post-harvesting losses. And also we are able to manage producing our own seeds and because seeds availability is a big issue nowadays. So we were able to manage our own seeds lots for the next cultivations. And also NutriPack for the CBL farmers during last year, due to unavailability of fertilizers and other things, we decided to do the field trials with the available sources and the materials. So we were able to develop certain packages for our crops, and we transfer those things to our farmers, and we were managed to get about 50 to 60% yield from our crops. And not only that, we were planning to educate our employees and the community for promote the farm garden to man the steps to mitigate the risk of food scarcity, because which is a very, very important area. And also with the support of Agriculture Department, we were distributing the home garden seed packs, and also we were developing some posters to educate our employees and the communities. And basically we are focusing on 4 crops, cassava, sweet potato, cowpea, and the green gram, which will provide the essential nutrient requirement for the households. And also some digital solution for the agriculture community to connect it with the agriculture community. Since the COVID came, that area was very lacking, because farm engagement is very, very difficult during that time. So we were thought to introduce digital solution for our farmers, so where we can connect our farmers and registration, input, distribution, and procurement, all we can done through this platform. Actually, this was partially funded by the International Labour Organization too. So another thing is digital payments to the farmers to promote banking facilities, as well as the improve their saving behavior, because farmers are not saving their money, or they don't have that such habit. So through the digital payment system, we were able to improve their credit worthiness towards the banking sector. And also we have introduced crop and medical insurance for the farmer to keep as a motivation factor to minimize their crop losses, and also support for their illness, which covers this insurance scheme too. And also we are providing technical support and training for our farmers to increase their productivity. And we have identified key areas of each crop, and we giving the technical support to improve the farm level productivity. So these are some of the mitigation actions we have taken during last 2 years to improve the crop production and support the crop production in the country. So with that, conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amal Gunatilaka, for sharing with us the agribusiness perspective of food security. Following the agenda, I may now call upon Mr. Nandalal Pereira from Haley's Agriculture Holdings to share their thoughts on the agriculture inputs perspective of food security.
Thank you, Shahara. And good afternoon, all the participants. In my short presentation, I would like to look at 4 key areas. Actually, my presentation would maybe in some areas overlap with the presentations made by some others, but I must tell you that it is actually, even if there's an overlap, it will be from a different perspective. So just to outline what I'm going to talk about, I'll first talk about post-COVID agriculture and food security in Sri Lanka. Then I will also talk about the global situation, because global situation had a direct bearing on what happened here and what is going on here right now. Then also the Sri Lanka's experience in 21-22, some of the key experiences we had and the repercussions of those, and the way forward. For in short term, I'm not talking about any long-term solutions or plans. I'm just going to talk about what is required to be done in the short term. Shara, can we go to the next slide, please? Post-COVID food security, 2021. Please look at the year, the 2021. Something that happened in Sri Lanka was there were many lockdowns, and a lot of people went back to their villages or were staying at home. Then they started cultivating even in small scale in their home gardens, or in addition to that, there were people who went back to their villages and started cultivating abandoned lands, abandoned paddy fields. So there was a huge upheaval in agriculture activities. And then government also encouraged at the same time during the COVID period to engage in agriculture. And also another plus was we had favorable weather throughout 2020. I can remember rain started in February and continued till about November. For about 10 months, we had intermittent rains all over the island, and that was very conducive for agriculture. Now, as a result, there was a huge run on supplies like fertilizers, crop protection chemicals, seeds. There was a huge demand that was created. And in particular, the fertilizers, which were, being imported under a quota, became scarce, and government summoned the private sector in September, excuse me, in September 2020, and asked the private sector to import additional 332,000 metric tons. And this became very useful to the farmers as well as the general public, because in Yale 2021, even after the chemical fertilizer ban, the private sector was in the possession of 85,000 metric tons, and this was distributed through the government agency called the Agrarian Service Center. So there was fertilizer available for most part of Yale as well of 2021. Then when the shortages started in the latter part of 2021, counterfeit and smuggled crop chemicals came to the market. We found glyphosate imported, smuggled from India, and many other chemicals that were, made, and some people used the labels of prominent chemicals to market those. In 2021, in the financial year, full capacity cultivation of paddy, so much so there was a surplus harvest. Then the full extent of maize, potatoes, onions, and vegetables were harvested because the inputs were available in 2020 for most part of 2020. Then the retail prices of staple food was affordable despite COVID. COVID was a sort of an obstacle, but the prices were reasonable and affordable during 2020 and the early part of 2021. Then with all this, food security was satisfactory despite various global and local issues. Sharon, the next one. Shara. Well, I think in the local context, we need to talk about global developments in 2021 and 2022, because those developments affected Sri Lankan agriculture directly. To begin with, in 2021, energy costs started rising. Oil prices, gas prices, and various other fuel prices started rising. And now these prices are probably at the highest ever level. If not oil, the other energies like gas and gas is very expensive. And as a result, worldwide production of agri-inputs like crop protection chemicals and fertilizers have affected. Now, as some of you may know, gas is used to produce urea, gas is produced to make sulfate of ammonia and phosphates. Acids are used to make phosphate fertilizers. So this shortfall in production of various supporting products has resulted in a reduction in production of agrochemicals and fertilizers. Then on top of that, China, due to these reasons, China, which produces 32% of world's fertilizers, restricted the export of urea and phosphates in July 2021. And we were importing most of our urea and almost the entirety of our phosphates from China. China did this in order to keep the domestic prices, domestic fertilizer prices under control, and as a result to keep the food and other prices, food and vegetable prices under control. By August 2021, all the agri-input prices have reached the highest ever level because urea prices have tripled from October 2020 to August 2021, actually about 3.5 times increase in the urea price. Same with the other fertilizers. So that has affected our pricing. Then increase in freight and logistic costs, naturally because gas and oil prices have gone up. The number of containers moving back and forth from various countries were stuck at various ports due to COVID issues. And the freight and logistic costs heavily increased. Then the next point is, as a result, I mean, watching all this, as another speaker said earlier, countries worldwide took steps to ensure own food security, whereas Sri Lanka did something totally contrary to that with the organic experiment. So the thing is, take China, take India, take the European countries, all of them took steps to secure their own food. So much so, India allocated additional 36 billion Indian rupees towards the fertilizer subsidy around, I think, October last year. 36 billion Indian rupees, because their fertilizers are heavily subsidized, which ensures food security. And India strengthened its subsidy scheme with a new cash infusion. Then Russia and Belarus, because the war in Ukraine started and Russia and Belarus, the top producers of urea and potash. Russia is one of the top producers of urea and potash. Belarus is probably the largest producer of potash in the world. Both these countries were put under sanctions in March 2022, cutting off 20% of the world's urea exports supplies and 70% of world's potash supplies. Now, this has not hit us yet very much, but in the coming months, particularly the potash situation is going to hit us. Then a large portion of world wheat exports have been cut off due to war in Ukraine, because Ukraine and Russians are the largest exporters of wheat, and this has driven up the prices of rice, wheat, and pulses in the international market. So the general staple food prices in the international markets have risen dramatically. Then shipping and freight costs still continue to remain high. So the cost of freight, whenever we import something, we find that the cost of freight is very volatile. It is ever increasing. And to make matters worse, some of the shipping lines have started calling on in Colombo. So bulk importers like us, the fertilizer importers, have really been affected by this. Shara, can we go to the next one, please? Then coming to the Sri Lankan experience in 2021 and 2022, yields of all food and export crops have suffered due to lack of inputs and nutrition. I need not harp on the point because we didn't have enough fertilizers, we didn't have enough crop protection chemicals. So as a result, the yields have suffered. Various speakers gave various figures. So I believe some of those figures are accurate. And rice and animal feed are being imported. Now we are from a country that was self-sufficient or with a surplus production of rice in 2019 and 20, we have now started importing rice and also animal feed. Cultivation extents of food crops have come down by almost 50%, or maybe in some cases over 50%. We know in this Yala season, paddy cultivation has come down by more than 50%. There's a figure of 250,000 hectares being quoted, but I don't know how much of it will survive towards the end of the Yala season. Some of the paddy cultivation might be abandoned by farmers. Funds allocated for fertilizer subsidy was diverted to government imports of unproductive inputs. Now, some of you may recall there was something called nano urea that was imported. There was no effect, no contribution from that product to our paddy cultivation. Then also, the government paid rupees 20 billion in advance and on delivery to organic manure suppliers. There were various types of organic manure being supplied, and the government took it upon itself to pay in advance. But you can see the results are not there today because we are facing a rice shortage, not only because of the Yala problem, but because of the Maha problem as well, last Maha. Then, as far as the private fertilizer importers are concerned, the government has to pay 22.5 billion rupees of unsettled subsidy. Now, private sector was selling their fertilizers under the common subsidy scheme of the government. And on account of this, the government still owes 22.5 billion to the private sector fertilizer importers. Some of this debt is more than 18 months old. Some of it is, all of the balance is 12 months old. And as all of you know, the interest costs have risen since last month, and the private sector is now paying a bank interest of more than 350 million per month on this unpaid subsidy, which is by any standard for anyone, I would say criminal. Then private importers cannot now, even if they want to import, they can't because the import facilities are blocked because of that debt. The banks are not willing to extend further facilities because the current facilities are fully blocked. So the fertilizer importers are unable to import any meaningful volumes of fertilizer right now. Then and the other problem is all the fertilizers were imported in the past on 180 days credit, but now we can't obtain 180 days credit because credit of that nature requires confirmed LC, and we don't have that facility from the banks. Not only a confirmed LC, even a site LC is not acceptable to most of our regular suppliers. People with whom we have been working for many years are unable to supply anything even on site LC because their bankers have advised against working on site LCs even. Then major shipping lines bypassing, I touched on it earlier. And with all this, the prices of agri inputs are very high right now. The international costs, the local costs, the banking, the LC opening costs, bank interest, all these are factored into the cost of inputs, and as a result, everything is very high in price. The price of essential food is at an all-time high. As we know, the rice the supplies are limited. As a result, rice is priced very high. Chicken is 1,200 a kilo, eggs is 50 rupees a kilo. So all in all, the essential food prices are at the ever highest level. Shara, can we go to the next one? Now, as I said earlier, the way forward, what we recommend is for the immediate future, we are strongly suggesting that we salvage the remaining cultivation of the Yala season with adequate supply of inputs. That is fertilizers. Private sector is carrying right now about, I think, 30 to 40,000 tons. The prices are quite high, but that is available to the farmer. If the subsidy is settled, private sector will be able to import some fertilizers, at least in limited quantities, towards the latter part of the Yala season. Then also make fuel available for agri-related activities. Maybe the forces can help it. As someone suggested earlier, the railway can be used because a practical example, a lorry comes to a warehouse to collect fertilizer in Colombo, and it will load and go and wait in a fuel queue for 3 days. Then what happens? The lorry breaks down, the fertilizer is not delivered on time, the dealer who has invested a couple of million rupees in a fertilizer load is waiting for his supplies to come. So an utter waste of resources and time. Then our main proposal is to concentrate on securing 4 important elements for the Maha season. Now we were talking about Yala season, but as the Professor Marambe had mentioned in his presentation, we need to secure the Maha season by supplying adequate seeds, fertilizers, crop chemicals, and also fuel for agriculture activities, for the farmer to till his land, for the farmer to use his harvester. We need to supply diesel and petrol, whatever, based on his requirement. Now, in the case of seed paddy is something that we cannot import. It has to be produced in Sri Lanka. And with the cultivation coming down by 50%, there's a severe danger of seed paddy becoming scarce in the Maha season. So here the Department of Agriculture will have to step in, and even if they have to offer a very high price, maybe 200 rupees per kilo or 250 rupees per kilo for seed paddy, the Agriculture Department should secure seed paddy, adequate seed paddy stocks, and also the local vegetable seeds and maybe even the hybrid seeds, and create a seed bank so that any farmer who requires seeds, if it is not available in his area or with the dealership in his area, he can come to the department and buy. And the department can even subsidize it directly to the farmer. Then it is very important, as I said earlier, settle this overdue fertilizer subsidy. 22.5 billion This has crippled all the organizations that were involved in the chemical fertilizer business because the funds allocated for chemical fertilizer subsidy were diverted to organic fertilizer. So win situation for the organic fertilizer suppliers and a loss situation for the chemical fertilizer suppliers. Then once that is done, the government will have to make adequate foreign exchange available to importers of seeds, crop chemicals and fertilizers and create price competition. Now, price controls will deter people from importing because most of the time the price controls are not practical or they are not implemented in a practical manner. When these calculations are done, computations are done by certain officers, they don't look at the overheads, they don't look at the current level of expenditure in mercantile organizations, their day-to-day expenses, and they just pick up, say, okay, 5%, 8%, and you can't work on such margins anymore. You need to make margins. But if you liberalize imports, if you make sure that the required foreign exchange and funds are made available through the banks, because nobody is asking for the government to fund us. We are talking about our money and doing business through the local banking system. Then there will be price competition and prices will become reasonable. Then also allow import of effective pesticides and broad spectrum weedicides. Now, this is the time I think some people may not agree, but I strongly would recommend that we import broad spectrum weedicides, like maybe even glyphosate, or a little more safer products even, in controlled quantities and make it available to the farmers. Because you can't grow any, let's say for example, maize. Maize is grown like in China cultivation and you can't be weeding one by one. You need to spray weedicides. Any form of subsidies, we also suggest that any form of subsidies, because the government is talking about subsidies, must be paid direct to the farmers, not to importers. Importers don't want to be burdened with subsidies, number one. Number two, the farmer should get, based on his maybe output or maybe on his land extent, whatever, based on the recommendations of the area's agriculture officer, the farmer should receive a direct subsidy, not a blanket subsidy. And also, for example, fertilizer subsidies in the past were common to everybody. The large corporates, medium-sized landowners, poorest farmers, paddy farmer, tea farmer, everybody is smallholder, large tea estate owner. So the government will have to, I think, streamline this and make sure only the deserving gets a subsidy. And also a coordinated effort to uplift export crop production. Now we are talking about lack of foreign exchange. Therefore, we must work towards improving the inflow of foreign exchange to the country through a coordinated effort. There's the TRI, there's the CRI, there's the RRI, the Agriculture Department, the TSHDA, Tea Commissioners Department, Coconut Development Board, Coconut Cultivation Board. All these bodies must work together without working in isolation, without doing their own thing. So as someone suggested earlier, change in agriculture policy or a long-term policy must be developed encompassing all these crop areas and crop activities. So that is something that is essential, if not in the short term, but something that we will have to do in the medium term. With that, I end my presentation and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Anilal Pereira.
Yes.
we have a limited time for the panel discussion. Now,
Yeah.
may I introduce our panelists who will be joining with us for the discussion. Professor Ruchira Kumartunga, Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, University of Ruhuna. Professor Siri Hettige from University of Colombo. And Dr. M.A. Veerakorn, former DG of Department of Agriculture, and Mr. Chitral Munavira, former General Manager NLDB, and Mr. Nirmal Hettiarachchi, Technical Head of Fresh Produce at JK Marketing Service Private Limited, and Dr. Renuka Jayatissa, Head of Department of Nutrition at MRI. And the session will be moderated by Mr. Rizvi Sahid, Chairman Agriculture Steering Committee of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce and Chairman Sri Lanka Agripreneurs Forum. I may invite all the panelists to take this forum for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiara. Let's dive straight away into the panel discussion. May I, at the outset, invite a very distinguished gentleman, Professor Emeritus of Sociology, Colombo University, Professor Siri Hettige, who's erudite scholar and who could provide a framework for our panel discussion. I'd like to invite Professor Hettige to, in a few minutes, to provide a framework by which the whole subject of food and nutrition security can be addressed. Professor Hettige, over to you.
Professor Hettige, you are muted.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'll be very brief because we are really behind time. So I would make few observations. Certainly, the presentations are so insightful, so informative. I don't want to comment on that, but I think it's better for us to figure out where we are as a country. I think that is really the most important thing. I mean, we cannot discuss anything about education, agriculture, industry, anything unless we know exactly where we are and how we could really, maybe even to get out of where we are. Now, I think the point is that we are in a situation where populism has dominated our public life, especially our politics for number of decades. And as a result, we have moved away from any kind of technocratic orientation of the state. I mean, you look at the East Asian situation where you have technocratic states where knowledge, guides policy making, and then evidence, guides decision making. So whereas here, policy making is not guided by knowledge, and and decision making is not necessarily based on evidence. So that is where we are, and I think that is really what has brought us to this massive crisis. And I think we have to recognize this very important point if we were to really get out of this. Now, of course, we have this massive economic crisis which impinges on every aspect of life. But again, let's see whether we are organized as a society, as a polity, to really overcome this massive crisis. If we are not organized in the way that we should, naturally, we are not going to really get out of it very, very rapidly and so on and so forth. What I'm getting at here is that, you can't have individual decision making. You have to have collective decision making. When I say collective decision making, people with the expertise, people who represent different interests, sit around the table, and then they deliberate and then they take decisions. And that is the kind of a moderated approach to decision making, policy making, and so on. So in other words, you take into account diverse perspective, diverse ideas, and also diverse interests, and try to somehow take a decision which is somehow acceptable to a wider cross section of people. Now, I think the point is that unless we have an integrated system of managing anything, we are not going to really address all aspects of the problem. And I think that is where we are now. For instance, we are talking about three sectors. We have the private sector, we have the state sector, and then we have the people out there, including civil society. Now, the point is that we need to really have, all three sectors integrated into, this whole process that we are talking about. And that, I think, is not there. And I think, all this knowledge that is there in the institutions, both private and public, should really flow into the room where the decisions are made. But if that doesn't happen, you will have all the knowledge, you will have all the evidence, you have all the expertise in the country. But if you are not going to tap those resources, you're not going to really make much headway. Anyway, I think the point that I tried to make was that we have the institutions. We have all the institutions that you can think of in the world, whether they are policy making or whether they are, specialized, agencies dealing with various issues and so on. We have all that. We have established all these, about 450 of them over a long period of time. They are there, but then the point is that they are not being activated to really bear upon what happens, in the rooms where the decisions are made. So, and if you rely on individuals, to really, take decisions, you're going to have a serious situation. That is what we have seen now. Now, coming to this whole issue of food security, I don't really have much to add except, to make a couple of observations. I think there are two dimensions to this. One is, of course, the market failure, and market failure is the demand and supply, and I don't have to tell you about that. I think, when you rely entirely on the market forces, and if you have real market related problems, certain people are going to be really left out. I think how to really take care of the people who cannot really survive in a market kind of situation. For instance, people who cannot buy food. Now, I think they have to be taken care of because you can't allow people to starve. You can't allow children to be malnourished and so on. So, but therefore, you have that segment, so you cannot rely entirely on the market. You have to figure out how to really address that supply issue, supply of food to the people who are in need but do not have the capacity to purchase. Then we are moving into self-help option that we are talking about, basically food drive, or growing your own food campaign, or I don't know, you can call it whatever you like. I think there we have to again figure out how can it be inclusive, because there can be always groups that are left out, even in the most comprehensive food drive that you have. For instance, for obvious reasons, all those people who are living in high-rise apartment, low-income high-rise apartment blocks in Colombo, I mean, they wouldn't be able to participate in that unless you find certain spaces where you can establish collective community farms where they can be given small plots and so on, but should be at a walking distance. They can't be traveling by bus to do this. So point is that I think is very, very important. And then again, this food drive has to be an integrated program. You can't simply say, okay, there's a piece of land, you go and grow whatever you like. That is not the way to do it. You have to have, everything that should be in place. Like, for instance, they need the inputs, they need the kind of security of whatever they grow. They are not, doing it in the backyard. So there are so many issues, and I think we also have to make sure that they have the capacity to participate. If you have no income, just because you need food, it doesn't mean that you can go out and cultivate your crop. But how can you manage your other needs? Because you need the money to buy, other things, and it's not just the food, but also you cannot grow all the food crops that you need. Obviously, they can't be cultivating paddy in Colombo, naturally. So the point is that there are so many issues that have to be looked at, that have to be recognized, and that have to be addressed through an integrated system, so that you will be able to figure out how to make this food drive on the one hand bringing out enough food as a supplementary source, so that it makes a difference in the household in terms of food availability, but it also allows everybody to kind of participate. So I think that is very, 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 very important. And like in India, they have a system called the employment guarantee scheme. If you are without work, no income, and so on, they put you on some kind of a wage on a daily basis, but you have to do something. You have to produce something, and then at the end of the day, you get your wage, and then you go out and buy whatever. So maybe this is necessary for a short period, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months, but then they can basically find their own source of income, and then they might be able to combine this food production with their own employment. And the other last point that I want to make is that we have to also figure out how to bring back people who are losing their employment, losing their jobs. Because if you don't really address that issue, because a lot of the people are losing jobs and income and so on and so forth, we are having a major problem. So that you need to have a kind of a scheme whereby you could support people who are falling through the cracks. And I think we are seeing them falling through the cracks in huge numbers. So that's the last comment, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm very sorry if I took longer than I should have, but I think I could not really help there. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Hettige. You've given some sound insights in terms of the framework, and I'm sure this will put context in the addressal of the many issues. We'll now dive again very quickly into some practical solutions, and for that we have an eminent panel who can comment very briefly on some practical ideas, short-term as well as long-term. I'd like to start with Dr. W.W. Weerakoon, the former Director General of Agriculture, who's currently with the FAO as well. Dr. Weerakoon has got immense years of experience and knowledge and contributed a lot to the formation of the National Agriculture Policy as well. Dr. Weerakoon, would you like to comment in 3 to 5 minutes on what you think are some practical steps that can be done in terms of all the issues that have been highlighted so far? Dr. Weerakoon.
Thank you, Saeed. Thank you. Very good afternoon to everybody. Whatever said and done, what is needed right now is to make sure that before getting into the humanitarian crisis, where the food is not available in this country, we must produce some food, because is giving food, bringing it from other countries and giving it to the farmers will solve the day-to-day problem. But as far as the long-term issue is concerned, we must produce our own food. We know that 2021 we have flourished, we have come to the top, and within a short period of time, we have shown a lesson to the world that how a country can go from flourishing to begging within a season or two. So now what is left? What is required is the current Yala. We have to salvage something out of it, because we know the food available from the last Maha, the paddy available from last Maha, and this Yala is just enough for a mere 7 months. So that is totally out now. So what we have to do is some or other get the Yala production up with something to giving something to the farmer. I know that in Ampara and that area, the production is almost coming to an end, where they are going to harvest, but they are, of course, through other means of fertilizer and agrochemical, they have done something. But I know most of the land, so roughly about 200,000 hectares, are suffering from fertilizer. The most important thing is to give some fertilizer to these farmers, and to get at least 50% of the harvest by giving at least one top dressing. You don't need to give everything to them. And then the other most important thing is to secure seed paddy from this Yala season. We need 80,000 tons of seed paddy per season for the next Maha. If we don't have seed paddy, definitely we'll have a problem. We can't import seed paddy because of the long-term impact on quarantine. I mean, a lot of diseases may come into Sri Lanka. We don't want to go for that. Only thing is at least salvage some of these germination tested seeds and give it to the farmers. For that, of course, the government of Department of Agriculture and Agri-Research Department, they are working on with the private sector. As far as I know, I think probably Dr. Ajanta would have told you, they are trying to secure about 1 million bushels. That's about 20,000 tons. And farmers may have about 50% on their own seed paddy. But we have to some or other buy another 1 million tons of 1 million bushels of 20,000 tons from the this yala and keep it ready for the next mass season. If there is a huge shortage of rice in this country, people may tend to eat that because hungry is more than, I mean, they can't afford to lose it when the family is in danger. So because of that, the government should directly get involved into this and get some funds and then purchase it through whatever means, or even the paddy marketing board can do it and then distribute among farmers either free or distinct. The second most important thing is we have to make sure that the Maha seed paddy is available. Maha maize seeds, which is almost 90% imported, 100,200 tons of hybrid seeds of maize is very important for Maha season. We must get that, and also the fertilizer for that. So and other seeds of upcountry vegetables and all that which cannot be grown in Sri Lanka, produced in Sri Lanka, must be imported, and we have to give to the farmers. The seed is a number one issue. The number two issue, the first one is the fertilizer issue. Now, when it comes to Maha fertilizer application, the yala, of course, almost only one crop blessing can be given a small amount. We expect 65,000 tons of urea from India. But for the Maha, we need to have, for paddy alone, we need roughly about 150, 160,000 tons of urea, which may come, may not come. Whatever this comes, we need to make sure that that amount of fertilizer which is coming in will be going to the farmers and the farmers are using it efficiently. Now, otherwise, it will be a big, what you call, loss to the country, because in a crisis situation of this nature, the efficiency must be at a highest level. So, number one is, of course, assure fertilizer to the farming community. The other one is, of course, when it comes to the cereal production, that is the paddy cultivation, the weedicides. Almost 98% of the rice cultivation in Sri Lanka is direct seeded. Weedicide is a must for them, and we must secure weedicide for them. So, apart from agrochemicals, weedicide is a real high priority. I heard some of them are telling about glyphosate. Of course, if you can have glyphosate for maize cultivation, that's the best option. But if you for other weedicides, also for paddy, there's a real need for weedicides. Then, when it comes to the efficiency part, we need to think of the short term plus the medium term one. There, the integrated nutrient management systems and the IPM comes into play. We as a group, not as different organizations, but as a group, should go to the farm and tell them what is to be done in terms of increasing the efficiency and reducing the use of all these inputs, and to make sure that whatever the little quantity that we have, make good use of it and increase the productivity. Otherwise, it will be a big issue, as Professor just now mentioned. The whole government agencies, private sector, and all others should go united hand in hand with one focus, with one message to the farming community. And like what we did in a small problem where we had this COVID, the fall armyworm issue, everybody should get united and go to the farm and tell what is to be done. And I'm sure that if we can do it with little amount of inputs available, we can get the best out of this Maha season. Now, when it comes to soliciting fertilizer, of course, a lot of people said we are having difficulty in getting fertilizer because of this Russian crisis and world market price and all that. I think it's the duty of the government to go for, like what we did for medicine, a donor forum or something of that nature, where we can get the support from international organizations. Of course, the government should request for that. And at least, because we need roughly for rice, we need roughly about 250 to 300,000 tons of urea. That can be sorted out from different countries if we go and ask them with good faith. Those are the very short-term measures that we should think. But there's one more thing which we did not discuss about the fertilizer. That is the recipe, of course, know very well that the phosphorus. We are running difficulty in getting down phosphorus, but we have our own phosphate deposit. We have experts in this country where they can produce SSPs, single spore phosphate. From that, with little input, so the private sector should come in and make sure that the production of phosphate within the country, at least within another 2-3 years time. So that will give us some opportunity to make fertilizer available to the farming community. So Rishi, I will get into the question and answer those questions earlier. That's what my immediate plea to this thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Venugopal. Thank you for those amazing insights. We'll spend some time in taking some of the questions as we go along. I'd now like to introduce Professor Ruchira Kumaratunga. She's somebody who has been very passionate, very knowledgeable, and who can contribute much to this important area which comes under the domain of agriculture, and that is fisheries and aquatic resources. She and I believe Professor Upali Amarasinghe also is here as our special guest, but I'd like to ask Ruchira to comment on the impact and the issues arising out of developing the fisheries sector in response to the food needs, particularly the nutrition aspects of food, fisheries and aquatic resources. Ruchira, what do you think are the key issues, and what might be the required interventions right now to help us to get fisheries and fishery products out to the market and people? Ruchira?
Okay. Thank you for inviting me for this important forum. Actually, now we were always talking about green economy. I think we have to think about blue-green economy because we have a lot of water resources in this country. Actually, when we talk about the water resources, marine sector has about 510,000 square kilometers, and also the freshwater sector has 2,600 square kilometers. From that freshwater system, we are getting annually about 90,340 metric tons of fish. From the marine waters, we are getting 415,000 metric tons. So actually there is a big potential to develop the freshwater sector, because since 2016 to 2019, the freshwater fishery production has increased by 20%. At the moment, actually, they are stopped. The freshwater fishery production is coming from culture-based capture fisheries, because we have introduced tilapia and Indian carps and Chinese carps into the reservoirs, and this production is not only helping to have a protein source, and also it will help to reduce the malnourishment. So at the moment we are only talking about 7% of these the freshwater resources with fingerlings, but we can increase it by having, actually the fingerling production is very low because it is due to a policy decision, because the NACDA is the only institution which is producing these fish fingerlings. That means the the young ones. So if we are getting the private sector to produce the fingerlings and introduce them into these reservoirs, we can improve the fish production, inland fish production, without any difficulty. So there is a possibility of introducing back garden cultures. Even women can get involved. We can grow these fingerlings in fiberglass tanks in the back garden. So that for that, the technology can be gained from India. There is an Odisha training center. From there, we can get the training. If we can send some people from NACDA for training, we can get the training from there, and then improve the fingerling production. So that is how we can help to overcome the problem of food, especially the protein sources, by improving the inland fish production. In addition to that, we have to improve the marine fishery sector. For the moment, actually, it is a problem because of the fuel crisis. But for the freshwater system, there is no problem because in most of the reservoirs, we are not allowing them to use any mechanized boats. So the fuel problem is not there. But when it comes to the marine sector, the fuel problem is there. But at the same time, I have to tell that there is a big loss, a post-harvest loss. About 50% of the fish are discarded, either because it can't be processed, and also when they can't sell it, they just discard it. And also in the fish processing industry also, they have They are taking the edible the parts, and the rest is discarded. But now they are processing it to have other produce other value-added products. So actually, we have to think about the reducing these post-harvest losses. Now, especially because in the marine sector, the chilling facility, most of these multi-day boats, they don't have this chilling facility. So the fish which are captured cannot be kept fresh until they are landed. So now the certain actions have been taken by the fish exporters, but even for the local consumption, we have to have good fish. So to do that, we have to improve the chilling facilities in the boats. So we have recommended to have these solar panels in the boats so that they can be used to have this chilling facility in some of these boats. And at the same time, there should be a proper management. Now there are illegal fishing methods used, blast fishing. Blast fishing is really destroying the quality of fish captured because they will not last long. There is internal bleeding, so after that there can be autolysis of flesh. So by the time the fish are landed, they are not in good quality. They can't actually, we can't eat them, especially when you take the trevallies, parava in Sinhala. You can see that the flesh is not good. Actually, most of the fish which are found in the market are not in fresh condition. And at the same time, when we talk about the inland fisheries, inland fishery production, although these inland fish are available close to the reservoirs, it is not available in cities. I heard that there are some canned products using the Katla Indian carp, and it is available in I think this milk food outlet. I can't remember, Palatha milk food outlet. It's available, but it's in small quantities. But it can't be made available to the supermarkets because they don't get a large profit margin. Because of that, they don't like to sell them. If they sell it, it will be they're asking for a very high price. So we can get the government to improve the inland fishery production, and also we can improve the post-harvest technology like marinating, canning. There can be all sorts of things done, and also we can make this ready to cook and ready to eat products available, fish balls, and then there are other products we can make out of this flesh. So actually we have to improve the inland fish production, then post-harvest losses should be reduced, and also we have to introduce post-harvest technology to sell ready to eat and ready to cook products. So actually our future lies in the sea. So I think we have to go for a blue-green economy, and because we are an island nation, we have a lot of water resources, we have to utilize them to the maximum if we are to fight this food crisis. Because we don't have to go with the begging bowl to other countries if we really manage our resources, especially the fishery resources properly. We don't have to go with the begging bowl to other countries. We have experts in this country, and also I must say that for people to do research in this country, the laboratory facilities also should be improved. That is a long-term, actually it's not a medium-term, and it is a long-term process. But if we improve that, we will not have these scientists just leaving the country, because now we find a lot of university academics are leaving the country. They get the education, they go for better pastures because they don't have the facilities here. So if we are to really improve our food production, we have to keep our brains inside the country. So I think there are a lot of things to talk. I think 10 minutes or 15 minutes is not enough to talk about fish. But anyway, I just gave some information. And also the waste. Fish waste is also another resource. So we have to do some value addition to fish waste. It can be used as fertilizer also. And also it can be used to produce the fish food and animal food. So we have to think about these areas also. I will stop here because I don't think I can take much more time to talk about it.
Thank you very much, Professor Ruchira. Thank you for those keen insights. You brought some new perspective in terms of how the role of the fisheries and aquatic sector can play in supporting.
And also, I just forgot to tell something. We can introduce hydroponic systems, fish and vegetables. So that is also possible.
That innovation is definitely needed, and that's the thought leadership we require from academics and strong professionals like you, Professor Ruchira. Thank you very much. Professor Ruchira, is Professor Upali also in present today? I didn't see him.
I didn't see him actually. I couldn't. He didn't contact me also. I was trying to contact him. He didn't take the phone. Yeah.
Let's see whether he can join when you do the Q&A for a short while. I'd like now to introduce another very eminent personality who's had a lot of specialist involvement in the dairy and livestock sector, Mr. Chitral Munavira, who's a former general manager of the NLDB. Chitral has been a close associate and is now involved in many advisory and other capacities in the sector. Chitral, would you like to comment on some of the key issues, and the dairy and livestock sector is going through some tough times? Can you recommend how some of the issues can be addressed, and what are some practical recommendations that we via the chamber can recommend to the powers that be and government to make these changes to the dairy and livestock sector to help improve outputs of milk and dairy and poultry? Over to you, Chitral.
Thank you very much, Rizvi, for inviting me in. I wish to, I'm very happy that I'm invited for this forum, and it's a great pleasure to be amongst so many eminent people who have contributed during today's session. I don't want to take much of time. I would like to briefly explain about the current situation of the dairy industry in Sri Lanka. You know, the animal-based food security in Sri Lanka plays a very important role in Sri Lanka's food security. Currently, we are facing big constraints with regard to sustain our farms, especially due to the shortages of maize. I think the Director General of the Department of Agriculture is present. I think we were self-sufficient in maize, but currently, you know, with the low cultivations that have gone on due to the problems that we had with regard to fertilizer and other issues, the maize supply is very badly affected. And we need about 600,000 metric tons of maize per annum. I'm talking about the two main industries, that is the poultry and the dairy. And the poultry sector is a well-organized network, which has their grandparents, parents, commercial farms, and a very well-organized system where the per capita consumption of chicken is about 11 kilos. And eggs is about 125 kilos, which is from the times you take back to 1980, it was 32 eggs and 100 grams. So you can imagine the impact that is going to be on the animal-based food security on the nation. I mean, I'm talking about the rural people, the children, and all that. You know, currently the egg production has declined to 34%, and also the milk production had dropped down to almost 20%, and the chicken meat production, which the requirement was, which we targeted at 240,000 metric tons, has dropped down to 211,000 metric tons, which is the current situation right now. So there are definitely significant impacts that are taking place due to the food security, but on the animal-based food security, with regard to the animal feed preparations, I would say that the compounded feeds that are manufactured in Sri Lanka is about 1.4 to 1.5 metric tons, out of which only 7% is utilized by the dairy sector. The balance is all directed to the poultry sector. Unlike, of course, with regard to maize, I mean, if correct steps are taken, I think the Agriculture Department has already discussed about this, and they have explained in length. Professor Marambe and I think Dr. Veerakon and all these people explained about the length on the cultivation program that are going to that was recommended to be implemented. With regard to maize, you know, at the given time, we have to rely on imports because we are very, very short of maize as an ingredient. And in the poultry industry, 80 to 90% of the industry survives on concentrate feed. So you understand the problem. Also, we require around 350,000 metric tons of soya bean meal. Now, soybean meal is a component that is not manufactured in Sri Lanka. Soybean meal has to be imported, and it's used as a protein source in our rations. So this is a very critical issue if we are to sustain. And poultry products are the cheapest source of protein for the nation. So this is a angle that has been focused very much, and it is a very critical situation right now. With regard to dairy products, I would say that in the dairy sector, the rations, are mostly there's a 50% drop in the major farms, that is the large scale farms. That is because they are mostly depending on total mixed rations for their cattle, and there's concentrated component that is involved. But among the small farmers, the loss is only about 15%. So nevertheless, both together has a significant impact on the industry, because Sri Lanka, I don't know at the given time what the dollar value is. Prior to the crisis, we used to import almost 100,000 metric tons of powdered milk to the country. That is because Sri Lanka is only 40% self-sufficient in milk. So these are all critical issues that has to be addressed, and the government has to set good policies. Otherwise, at the rate the milk price, the milk powder prices are escalating, and at the rate the things are moving, the animal-based proteins are going to be very difficult for the masses to procure. Especially, the egg prices have risen up from positions of 22 rupees, 23 rupees. It has gone up to almost 35 to 40 rupees per egg, and the cost of production is about 35 rupees to 40 rupees, so which is very high. So the farmers are finding it very difficult to sustain their farms. Even the large scale people are finding it difficult to sustain their farms. So this is the current situation of what the poultry and the dairy industry is facing, because I didn't focus on the other aspects, because these are the two major components when it comes to the livestock sector and the animal-based food security in Sri Lanka. In order to avoid these situations, the government will have to get down and move into some stringent policy changes, and also extend some sort of concessions to us, especially on the importation of soybean meal, where the government intervention is really necessary. Rizvi, I think I have explained a little bit. There's much more to go. So I will hand it over to you. If there are any questions, I am willing to answer.
Yes, thank you very much, Chitral. Thank you for those sound insights, and you provided some fresh perspectives on this part of agriculture, which encompasses the dairy and livestock sectors and the key issues and some ways forward. Certainly, policy issues have to be addressed, but there are a lot of things that the players in the industry also can do, as you alluded to. I'd like now to invite Nirmal Hettiarachchi from John Keells, very much involved in creating outgrower networks and creating sustainable agricultural value chains, supply chains. Nirmal has got some key insights in terms of recommendations following the John Keells outgrower model as well. Nirmal, you'd like to share that with us and comment on what you can see as good recommendations that can be replicated. Over to you, Nirmal.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rizvi, and thank you very much for inviting me to share our thoughts here, suggestions and recommendations. And also, very good evening for all who are joining with this today. And as previous speakers explained, all of you can understand how the situation looks like. We know what the issue is, and also some good recommendations and suggestions made by a number of experts here. So today my main focus is on the vegetable and fruit sectors, which is playing significant role in nutrition as well as food security. So on average in Sri Lanka, we are producing nearly 720,000 metric tons of veggies and 540,000 of metric tons of fruits annually. So out of 2.2 million farmers in the country, most of them are 1.8 million directly engaged with rice cultivation, and most of them do vegetable cultivations as well. So there are some regions they purely focus on vegetable sectors as sectors only. And as per the field observation made by our field teams, compared to normal period, this season cultivation extents dropped by 30 to 40%. I heard some previous speaker mention for rice cultivation it's more than that. And also, as a Keels, we are retail operator, and we know, we see customer views and customer changes as well, behaviors as well. So from customer point of view, we observe clearly drop in consumption, the clear drop in basket values. So we can see farmers, producers, at the other end, customers. So we are using price index, so based on farm gate prices per kilogram of veg. So it covers all available vegetable items. So based on that index in 2022, it was around 110 to 140 rupees per kilogram. And annual average is about 132 rupees per kg, right? And after imposed ban on agriculture inputs in 2021 April, it was normal until September, October last year. But there onwards, the prices were sky high. During month of December 2021, the price index was at 232. It's almost 100 rupee higher than the normal period. That is where consumer reaction started. So customers reluctant to spend more money on the veg and fruits, they more focus on essentials. So due to demand drops, prices went down a little bit, but sales were back to the but sales were not back to the previous numbers. Unfortunately, this situation led to the reduce the confidence level of farmers. So because in some cases, we observe that compared to the cost of production, some vegetables and fruits items were not profitable at all. So ultimately, farmers reduce the cultivate land extent. So now afterwards, we see real issues. So for example, to fulfill daily orders, we have to work with farmers, which is nearly double compared to the normal period. So for an example, if we want to fulfill previously using 500 farmers, but we have to work with 1,000 farmers in current situations. And also on top of that, fuel issue came to the picture. For some items, transport cost to Colombo is higher than the product cost. So end of the day, it's all accumulated to the selling prices and ultimately paying by customers. So from customer end, purchasing price index. So based on the farm gate prices, we are developing some index for selling prices as well. Compared to the selling price index, in April 2021, it was 150 to 170 per kilogram. And last December, it went up to 310 to 320. So last month, May 2022, that index was 327 rupees per kilo. So it is a huge pricing increase, and it's directly impact on customer behaviors and the consumption patterns. So as a retail operator, we are the first to see how market behaviors change over economic behaviors on customer consumptions and customer patterns. So also now based on, because we can see the real pictures, we have to take immediate actions to the two aspects. One is to retain the customers, and also support customers to make their life easier. I mean, more affordable options to fulfill their nutrition requirements. So we have two aspects actually. So in our supply chain network, there are about 4,500 farmers around the country. So our main focus was given to them to support their farmers to improve their productivity, to generate the more yield from respective land plot, and lower the cost, which leads the financially viable farming businesses. So we are supporting our farmers by creating, it's more like providing access to agri inputs. We are directly work with agriculture inputs companies for fertilizers, seeds, and agrochemicals. So we are creating accessibility to our farmers. So otherwise they have to wait another 3-4 hours in queues to get the bag of fertilizer. So we are supporting in that aspect as well. And also introducing technologies like drip irrigation. So last year, actually, we started a project with SAPP. So to introduce drip irrigation, the micro irrigation techniques with fertigation systems and insect-proof net, polymulching. So it clearly gives us the benefit of how to reduce the usage of fertilizer. Using fertigation unit clearly reduce the fertilizer utilization, and also insect-proof net, polymulch, reduce the risk of insects and weeds, and overall impact on agrochemical cost. So it was actually blessing for us to sustain this situation. I think our farmers now, they are on a, I'm not saying 100%, but they are in a somewhat good position in terms of reducing cost with the market prices of agri inputs. So, and also the continuous training and development activities will definitely improve the technical capacities of farmers. And we believe that right knowledge is the key to overcome situation like this. So also we are seeing some opportunity here, because with the limited access to agri inputs, we can push our farmers to adopt good agriculture practices. So when things are settled, it will be a good opportunity for them to reach some other markets as well. So out of other opportunities and the suggestions here, so one of the key suggestion is to improve the access to finance. So it will be a key role in the current situation, because majority of farmers give up their farming due to lack of financial options to purchase agri inputs. So today we saw a message circulating that government decided to waive off farmer loans who are having land less than 2 hectares. I don't know it's right decision to make at this time from the bank's end, but again, such a activities or actions should be taken to support our farmers. And also from customer end, so we took several initiatives to support our customers to make more affordability and more affordable products to them. And if you are visiting Keel supermarkets, definitely you will see there's a product range called Perfectly Imperfect. Last year we initiated that initiative to provide shelf space for ugly items, second quality items, but the only outer appearance are ugly, but internal quality is same. So that's sort of initiatives we are taking in, and also it's 20% less than normal prices. So and also we are promoting we see some opportunities to creating awareness on how to keep or store food materials at home with minimum damages. Still, most of our refrigerators have loads of unusable fruits and vegetables. So if you go and open your fridge, you can definitely find weathered fruit or vegetable pieces. And also we want to promote more local traditional options among customers. For an example, different yam types. But unfortunately, most of them don't know, most of the customers don't know how to cook it. So we need to create awareness on how to use it, how to cook it, and get the maximum out of it. And also we must promote substitute product that can provide same nutrition, which is easily available and affordable. I believe we have to immediately look at the protein substitute, as Mr. Chitral clearly mentioned. because now eggs, chicken, fish is not cheap anymore. It will be crucial for child, especially child malnutrition. So we need to look at that aspect as well. So all these actions should be looking at, it should be an overall holistic approach. So otherwise we are supporting farmers and only we are forgetting customers. So we need to address this issue as a whole. So then we can get a more synergetic impacts on our value chains, as well as we can sustain the system with more sustainable approaches. So Rizvi, thank you very much again for giving me this opportunity. And I think these are just small steps and actions we taken from our side, as well as some suggestions and the things we are planning to implement here. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nirmal. Thank you very much for those sound insights from the world of Keels and also from your outgrow experience. And I'm sure there are some thoughts that can be capitalized and used as best practices and adopted into agriculture. I'd now like to go on to a different area. And last but not least, I'd like to make some views with regard to the nutrition and health impacts. Admittedly, with the food crisis, we are only looking at some parts of it is in the hunger part. And as we looked at the definition of food security, the nutrition part is very, very acute for Sri Lanka and reduced, as Nirmal just said, even the offtake of vegetables and fruits, supermarkets and even wet markets, and according to statistics, even across the economic centers, we can say reduced sales of fruits and vegetables, which has a huge impact on nutrition and health. And I'd now like to invite Dr. Renuka Jayatissa, Head of Nutrition at the MRI, the Ministry of Health, to make a few comments with regard to what impacts the food crisis and shortage of food is going to have on some, particularly the vulnerable segments of our country, society, child malnutrition, children, as well as the elderly, as well as the people in between. So Dr. Renuka, over to you for some quick comments on how you see some of the issues and some of the alternatives. There are some interesting questions in the chat box with regard to alternative foods, but first to you with regard to your views on issues and some quick recommendations. Over to you, Dr. Renuka.
Okay, thank you. And as all of us know, many key nutrition indicators in Sri Lanka are moving very slow or no progress. So when we look at current situation, and 1 in 10 children under 5 are malnourished, 2 in 10 school children are malnourished. So that is the situation even before this crisis. At the same time, overweight and obesity is also growing. It is something very extremely worrisome about it. And at the same time, what are the key factors of these nutrition challenges at the moment? One thing is this high cost of healthy diet, and currently it's something like according to our estimates, about for a household, they need about 52,000 rupees to have a healthy diet per month. So which is something like 4 to 5 times cost of a basic energy sufficient diet. And the last year, December, when we did the measurements, 22% of the household in Sri Lanka were food insecure. And in the estate sector, it was about 68%. So these are the kind of things, facts that we have even prior to this crisis. So we have to now start from that. So when we look at the Venezuela and what has happened to them, they started the crisis with 3% of malnutrition. Now it has gone up to 24%. So when you ask from me, what is the impact? So obviously our malnutrition rate will really go up if we don't manage properly. But still we can manage it properly if we work together. And the second one is with these unhealthy diets, what happened with the children? They can definitely have a permanent effect on their physical growth as well as the cognitive development, which is something very serious because in the later life as adults, it will go up to their productivity as well as educational achievements and all these things. And then when it comes to elderly, especially about 70 years, and they need to be really prioritized because to reduce illness, you know, even now the medicine cost is high and even there's a threat with the essential medicine. So it's better to be healthy rather than getting any illness. So that's another thing we have to really always think about. So in our sense, it's a very nutshell, what are the kind of interventions that we are thinking of? And one of the things, one of the serious things, actually everybody talks, we should not really work in silos. And everybody, we should really have a, country should have a 6 months emergency food and nutrition plan. And it should be really work with all the sectors, and we can't forget the private sector and the civil society. They should be really a kind of very significant contributor in this aspect. And the second one is we have to look at who are the vulnerable, who are the prioritized group, because this is an economic crisis. We can't do everything for everybody. So we have to prioritize the people, prioritize the groups. So the main priority is children under 2 years, because they are the 80% of their brain development will occur during this time. We have to protect them. Then the next one is pregnant mothers. They are carrying a fetus, so they really need the good nutrition. So we have to support them. And especially children from estate sector and the urban undersettlement areas. These are the two priority sectors in our country. And the other thing is adolescents. We always forget children between 10 to 15 years. They are the children who have the highest growth peak, and if they miss it, they will be stunted. So then that's another issue. They will become adults. What about their productivity and things? So we can't forget them, because even currently they are lack of calcium, they are lack of vitamin D and all the iron. So they will be another priority group. Then, as I mentioned you earlier, that is the children and especially elderly above 70 years. So these are the kind of priority groups we have to think about. So whenever this about 6 months emergency plan, we have to really include them. What kind of support, what kind of assistance, what type of activities have to be included in that intervention, the key interventions. And when I was listening to these fisheries, and it was really sad to hear this 50% of the fresh water is kind of destroy or wastage. So we have to minimize wastage. We have to think about the new innovation like smoke fish and things, because these are the kind of things, and we have so many tanks, water tanks all over the country, and we can really breed a lot of freshwater fish, and then they go for the new kind of preservative methods like this smoking and things should be popular. And at the same time, another aspect we have to think about the media. Media should be really responsible media, and they should really provide the correct information for the people, and they should be very positive. Every time should not show these all the views and all negative things. They should be really go with the positive things. That's always a must for the people to get a lot of encouragement. Otherwise, everybody leave the country. There won't be anyone in this country who can do the things. And that's what which has happened to Kilinochchi and Molatu. I have been really watching Kilinochchi and Molatu that time. Everybody left, and even still that they are struggling with their development. And then the other part is we have to really look at this kind of, especially this protein-rich food are very important, because that's a food item people could not be afford in the future. So those are the things like that, because this backyard poultry and all sort of thing, and even the getting at least eggs and things, those are necessary. And the other one is a substitute. So there was a question in the Q&A, and the substitute rice, what are the things? Because we should not eat so much of rice. We can substitute these, all the roots and the tubers. Those are the things we have to really look at. And the preservating the seasonal food. This is something we have to think about, because there are a lot of 50% of food wastage during the season. And if we can really manage properly, we know we can really do it. And because our country resources are more than enough to maintain the nutritional status, but it should be managed, and the people should not really work in silos. Everybody has to work together and have a one plan, and it should be very short-term plan to come up and mitigate this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Renuka. Those were very, very strong insights and impacts from a different angle. There is one other area which we have not been able to cover in this discussion on food security and crisis, that is the environmental impacts. And I think everybody agrees, I think in the panel and amongst participants, that any approach to agriculture, whether it is the dairy sector or fisheries, has to come from a sustainability platform. And And I think the Chamber of Commerce gives a lot of credence to this. And certainly, although we could not cover that area in the interest of time, this is something that is not forgotten and will certainly will be addressed, the sustainability and environment aspects that arise from addressing food security issues. I'd like to now quickly go into the chat box. There are quite a few questions, but we'll try to spend about 10-15 minutes. I know it's been a long day. My first question, which arises from the chat box, is can the corporate sector expand their outgrower network fast if land can be allocated? Now, a lot of the companies in the private sector have got their outgrower networks. Some of them are present here as participants. And of course, I'd like to address first question to Mr. Mario de Alvis in his capacity as chairman of National Agribusiness Council as well. And perhaps Nirmal also can add, can the corporate sector expand their outgrower network fast if land can be allocated? This was from Mr. Manjula Silva, CEO of the Chamber. And government also is trying to make available unproductive and underutilized land. Mario, first you, and then Nirmal, and any others from the participants like to comment.
Thanks, Rishmi. I think expansion using the available outreach network and expanding is not a problem. But the problem will be to get the younger generations onto the field. There has to be a very effective program where everybody gets together and shows some respect, to farming. This is the biggest problem is, these days where when we have been discussing with all the input companies and various things, and trying to budget out, how we are going to get this, give adequate income to the farmers and for growing as an incentive. With that kind of profit that, is generally accepted. I don't think we can do. I look at the agricultural labor, even on estates and things like that. It's hardly possible for us to create incentives for the younger generation of people to go there. We have educated them, they are an educated generation. Some people by choice don't want to dirty their fingers, but given the correct incentives, bringing in new technology, connectivity, all those things bringing into the fields, yes, the short answer is yes, it can be done, but there is a Herculean effort needed to do this. And I think all of the private sector and everybody involved in agriculture and interested in the food security in the country will have to get together, especially the press. They have to communicate a very different thing. If any of us have time, you get into the social media and you can see excellent ideas coming from young people, from various villages, small time, simple ideas, but very practical and fantastic. So if we can actually create some kind, I'm sure the chamber and our two organizations can get together and create some incentives to get the younger people into farming, and then putting them, because one of the things also is that sometimes the older farmers are fixed in their ideas. Their expectations are a little too high. They want everything given to them because they have been under subsidy for so long. So thank you. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mario. Nirmal, any comments on how this can be expanded? I know yourselves and some of the others like Cargill's and a lot of others, CBL, etc., all have got outgoer networks and be expanded. Nirmal, you'd like to add a few comments very quickly in 60 seconds?
Yes, so I'm totally agree with Mr. Mario de Alvis. And also it's depend on the industry. I mean, the product wise or the crop wise and the requirement wise, it's different. But for our main objective of this period is mainly improve productivity with the same farmers. So I mean, in such situation, so we know we want to make their livelihood, ensure their livelihood, as well as the productivity levels. So yes, we can, but in this situation, our approach is like to improve more productive farmers within the same clusters. So if demand is higher and demand is growing, so definitely we can expand our operations.
Thank you, Nirmal. Professor Ruchira, you want to make a comment?
Actually, now we were talking about lack of space. I don't know whether you have heard about spirulina in a culture. It's an algae, green algae. In India, actually, they are culturing it even on rooftops. So it's actually an aquatic plant, microscopic plant, and they are also producing high energy tablets out of it. So I think Sri Lanka, I know in agriculture faculty of University of Runa, they were doing some research in collaboration with some Indian scientists. I think we have to promote that sort of culture also, because if the space is a problem, you can do that. And actually, especially when we talk about the blue economy, we have to use the marine waters, and also if we can do some mariculture program, actually start some mariculture programs that also can help the food security in most ways. So I think we have to think about expanding the aquaculture, mariculture sectors, especially because now, even in future, now there is a crisis. In future, due to climate change also, there can be other problems. So I think we have to be ready with those things. So because of that, I think we must promote especially the inland fish production should be given some priority, because they can have the natural calcium from fish bones, and also the prawns and crabs, the shells are thrown away. From those shells also you can produce a lot of things, chitin, chitosan, and also from the fish skin, collagen, you can even form gelatin out of it. So there are many things you can do with fish. So I think fish production should be promoted in this country. We have a good water resource. It's true that we have to use it for agriculture, then for domestic use. In addition to that, aquaculture is a promising industry in future. For the future, I think we have to concentrate on that. And I must emphasize that from 2016 to 2019, inland fish production have increased by 20%. Okay, due to the stocking of fingerlings into reservoirs. So I think that has to be promoted. We can promote it by using only 7% of the water resources. We are doing that. If we use more, that means we can increase the fish production. It is a good answer for malnourishment.
Thank you, Professor Ruchira. Thank you for the strong insight. There is a question from Mr. Udaya Vitana about stringent planning of areas under different crops in the next season is essential. This works well with the suggestion made by the NSF chairman, Professor Ranjit Senratna, with regard to the zoning and all of that. And the question is that the availability of data is a must. And this discussion has taken place at all levels within the NSF as well. Availability of data in planning for crops, including issues like soil fertility levels, the data on which crops grow well, where the economics of different crops, where it makes sense to zone the areas and cultivate crops, planning now for the next season. The question also requests perhaps Dr. Veerakun, as the former DG, might offer some insights on the readiness of DOA to provide that leadership, and how some kind of a task force might be set up under relevant authority in a public-private partnership manner. Dr. Veerakun, you have any comments? And if Professor Senrath is also NSF chairman, can add to that how we might practically roll out this program. Dr. Veerakun first.
Yes, Rishi, I think the crop zoning is, I think, already done to a certain extent based on the soil type and the agroecological regions. The real need for the immediate need is to increase the cereal production. That is the paddy production. Of course, there's no way of zoning it. Is 800,000 hectares are available by giving the required amount of fertilizer and making the seed paddy available. That can be done. And then the other one is, of course, maize production, which we need to go up to about 100,000 hectares, which we have done in 2021 March season. There again, Anuradhapura, Munragal, and that area is demarcated. The rest is only for the upcountry vegetables and the other field crops like condiments and other things. They are, again, the dry zone is required for those other field crops, and then upcountry vegetables. See, of course, yes, when it comes to the real planning process, not only the production side, we have to make sure that the production is marketed and the prices will be, because just growing and there will, if there's any glut in vegetable, their prices will go down at a situation where the price of inputs are very much higher, the farmers will lose everything then. So we have to make sure that we are going to increase, of course, cereals, no problem at all, maize, no problem at all, chili, no problem at all. But in other vegetables, if the production goes up very high levels, then of course we'll have a problem of using them. So we have to be very careful in increasing the production of vegetables in a situation where every farm, every household, they are trying to grow some vegetables as their own, for their own consumption. So we have to think of that as well in the future.
Thanks, Dr. Weerakun. Professor Senaratne, any thoughts on this wonderful thought, how we can give it some muscle? Any thoughts on actioning?
Thanks,
Yes.
Mr. Risri. This is a very pertinent question we are discussing, because now generally, now if you want to construct a building, multi-story building, we do soil testing and then decide whether piling necessary. Even for our marriage, we test about compatibility and see whether the two partners are compatible. But when it comes to agriculture, general practice, people grow crops. Any crop can be grown anywhere. Now you see now rubber being uprooted and you say, okay, we plant cinnamon. So we see a lot of indiscriminate and ad hoc planting in agriculture. As a result, yields are actually far below the potential. So that matchmaking is not happening. Actually, only in regard to cinnamon, I think really scientific study done to ascertain the suitability of land for cinnamon cultivation, and that is done by Professor Asha Karunaratne at Sabaragamu. That is a comprehensive study, will be based on science, but such studies are required. Then only we would be able to, we don't need to cultivate, 40% of land and agriculture. Land is becoming increasingly now limiting. There's a lot of other these sectors and built up areas need land. So I think this needs more attention, and we have to have a more scientific approach. It's a tech-based, tech-savvy agriculture necessary, and NSF will be happy to really take this forward in concert with relevant scientists. Thanks, Risri.
Thank you, Professor Ranjit Senaratne. Thank you. There's also Dr. Chandra Ambuldinia, who's also familiar with this concept. Chandra, you'd like to add something to what has been discussed in terms of the requirements of data and how we can organize this to decide on which crops to grow where, and a way forward plan. Some quick thoughts, Chandra. Whilst we await Dr. Ambuldiania's response, can I take one other question, which is an important one relating to the question of dietary changes. The question is, what kind of dietary changes can the population make to minimize the impacts of food shortage? What are some sustainable food alternatives that can be used as substitutes to common food items like rice, and how can these be promoted and produced? Firstly, maybe we can start with Dr. Renuka, who may have done some work in terms of crops that can be included in diet, and also some of the other views expressed earlier. There's a lot of talk about growing more manioc. We have a rich herbal heritage as well. We have lots of spices and other products. Are there any thoughts or responses to this question? Starting with Dr. Renuka.
Thank you. And I feel that staple one, we can always work with the other starchy food, because Sri Lanka is having a lot of starchy food items. Even now these days, jack and the breadfruit and everything is there. But at the same time, manioc and sweet potato, I think everybody has forgotten sweet potatoes. So that's another option we had to really think about, because most of the countries, African countries, they have come out from vitamin A deficiencies also due to this biofortified sweet potatoes. So these are the things, and even this kind of kiriala, and there are a lot of tubers are there. So these are the things we have to really look for, because it will come and the harvest will also come very soon, and then we can reduce the quantity of rice. But at the same time, green leaves, I think in Sri Lanka, the green leaves are very common, that we can have some sort of green leaf, even the passion fruit, tebu, so many things are there in the Japambatu, and so many green leaves are there. So, but the problem is these green leaves are mainly in the villages, and it won't come to the city. So this is the one that we need the technology. We need dehydration or a kind of vacuum packing or something, and it should come to the city. So then the city people do not have anything to eat. This part has to be really kind of managed properly. Then actually then the people can have the one tuber and the rice, and then the green leaves, and some kind of even the dry fish or some kind of protein one. So that will be a very good kind of healthy diet. So this way we have to really think of how can we really compensate, how can we really manipulate our diet to make it healthy. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Renuka. Chandra, are you able to?
Yes, I can. I can, Rizvi. Actually, I was listening to it from the beginning, and thank you very much for organizing this. It's an excellent input into the difficult situation that we are facing now. Actually, I've been working with the National Science Foundation to develop the technology to bring in the top-down and the bottom-up approach using a value chain process. Now, actually, my approach to the problem is taking a holistic view of the whole thing. And I know that Professor Senaratne has proposed a couple of immediate ideas about how to get down to the business of finding the people who excel in agriculture, and then also finding the land that is high productive, and also the crops that will be sustainable and quickly contributing to the growth in those land areas. Now, this requires a lot of information, data. So I'm ready to support with that kind of information. And also, in the normal course of time, the rubric and the cluster rubric value chain that we have developed will be very helpful in organizing the entire agriculture in our country to take it to contribute to the growth of our economy. So basically, I had to work on that. Of course, immediately we can help in solving that kind of immediate action that we need to take in the next coming up, the seasons that are coming up. So we have to work with the Department of Agriculture, the other organizations that are connected with agriculture to get that information, and then with the soil scientists and the crop scientists and from the universities, we should be able to get the necessary information into that. And then we will have a complete picture how to manage the thing and then getting into the business. So it will help the organizations that are doing, extending their outreach work, as well as the other people who want to get into the cultivation of agriculture crops in their lands. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chandra. Thank you for those sound insights. And I'm sure NSF also can finish. Now, I'd like to just take one more question in the interest of time, because we've had a very long session, albeit very interesting and useful. This question is from Mr. Sirivira Gamage with regard to the question of fuel for farmers. This is a very practical issue which needs to be addressed, and this is with regard to fuel for farmers. Without having fuel for farmers, you cannot think about commercial agriculture. Example, land preparation, and that's required farmers need the fuel for their tractors, hand tractors, water management, harvesting, food transport, etc. So we need to address this. I know very quickly from the Prime Minister's office itself, there's been some moves. I don't know how it's going to be implemented, where farmers in different cultivating areas are going to be allocated specific fuel sheds, petrol or sheds, in which they can go and obtain their requirements without having to wait in long queues. But if anybody in the panel has some suggestions how to make fuel for farmers, I've seen recently in the media farmers going back to using buffaloes wherever buffaloes are available, or pack mules for transporting some of the rice. Any quick responses to the issue of practically making fuel for farmers? Anybody in the panel?
Can I receive? It's Mario here.
Yes, Mario.
Yeah. Look, as I said, all the tractors, hand tractors and things are registered. So it's a simple thing of somebody compiling the data and looking, maybe using the agrarian outreach teams or whatever to say this much of land is being cultivated by this tractor. Some tractors are hired out. You can work that out. I don't think it will take a long time. We can use this. Government is asking our, the state sector employees to stay at home, saying they can't pay them. Get them onto the fields, and we can come up soon with the data, so that these can be, you can issue it on their, you just send them a text on their handphones to say, okay, you have 10 liters, go to this particular shed and collect it. So, I was mentioning data, I was talking about personal data, people, the vehicles, all that. It's not only the land and the zoning and things like that, but you need to know who is doing something. And with that, you can actually target your resources without getting wasted and wasting energy of people, to hang on queues and things like that. You can give a time and a place and how much of fuel is available for you to go. Of course, there will be corruption that we will have to settle in another manner, but this can be done.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you very much. I think we have had a very long and fruitful discussion. Before I conclude and hand over to Shehara from the chamber, I know we have a lot of issues that were discussed, a lot of interesting suggestions, and in a short session, which we have now extended also by half an hour, it might not be practically possible to get into an action planning session. But please be assured that the Chamber of Commerce, together with our committee, the Agriculture Committee at the Chamber, together with the NSF, which will drive the S&T agenda to bring in the innovation, technology, and the research to support the food security issues which we have discussed, they will get into action mode. And both the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, the leadership, as stated by Manjula, and also by the chairman of the NSF, is dedicated to helping to find answers. And all of these issues will be taken into account. It is the proceedings have been recorded, and these will be addressed into some kind of action planning format. Clearly, there is a need for task forces. And as was said at the beginning, unless people get together and work, it might be very difficult to address these, which are urgently required by the country and for the people of Sri Lanka. So I'd like to now hand over to Shehara, and please be assured all of the valuable ideas, the suggestions, the issues will be addressed on through the efforts of the Chamber of Commerce and the NSF going forward. Over to you, Shehara.
Hello. Hi. Yeah. After a great discussion, we have come to the conclusion of the session on food security. And thank you all the speakers and the panel members for sharing, having this informative and very insightful discussion with us today. And we'll be taking all this information and the discussions and the insights that you all have shared to the Agriculture Sector Committee and to the relevant institutions to take forward these short-term to mid-term and long-term solutions for agriculture sector to overcome the challenges. And thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Is there any other person that needs to be added?